Did you and Laura have a fight?
Not exactly. But she said she couldn't see me anymore.
Why?
She didn't say.
You recognize this necklace?
Yes, sir.
James, what happened on February 5th? And who has the other half of this heart?
Welcome to Chats, a television podcast, season 12, Peaks Chats. My name is Magellan, and podcasting with them is like having the most beautiful dream and the most terrifying nightmare all at once. It's Alan.
Hello, everyone. Magellan's intros are always the best when they make me go grin with like a joy I've never felt before, and then immediately feel a shock and a betrayal that I've never. That's the duality of Twin Peaks right there. There it is.
Yeah,
Hi.
There it is. Hey, we're also joined by a guest this episode. It's the person who really pulled the trigger on JFK. It's roommate of the pod, Charlie. What's up, Charlie?
It's me. I killed him.
Why?
Statute of limitations.
Oh.
Now we've answered Cooper's question, so there you go.
Welcome to Cooper's Cues, the podcast where every time Agent Dale Cooper asks a question on Twin Peaks, we answer it. Who killed JFK? Well, folks, it was Lee Harvey Oswald. He's the guy who assassinated the president out of a sense of justice or something. I don't remember why he did it exactly. That concludes Cooper's Cues.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll send that to Dale Cooper. Okay, we're back talking about Twin Peaks, which is the thing we do every week, 2 episodes at a time. This time around, we watched Traces to Nowhere and Zen, or The Skill to Catch a Killer. First was Traces to Nowhere, which is directed by David Lynch and written by Mark Frost and David Lynch. It aired on April 12th, 1990. And Alan, what happened in Traces to Nowhere?
In this episode, the investigation is fully underway as Truman and Cooper head to the Double R Diner to gather intel and try Norma's famous cherry pie. Interrogations with Doc Hayward, Josie Packard, and James Hurley reveal that Laura Palmer had a connection to every major character that we've met so far. Leo finds a bloody shirt in his laundry and suspects that someone is trying to frame him. Donna confesses to her mother that she loves James but is conflicted about her feelings. Nadine is working on her greatest invention yet, silent drape runners. Meanwhile, Ben Horne and Catherine Martell are having a sordid affair, and they plan to shut down the sawmill together to collect the insurance money. Hawk sees a one-armed man going to the hospital morgue. Major Briggs is disappointed in his son Bobby. Leo takes out his rage on Shelley, and Dr. Jacoby settles down for the night to listen to an old tape that he received from his patient, Laura Palmer. She confesses that she's sick of James's sweet nature, and she expects to be going back to the woods that evening. As Jacoby listens on in tears, he opens up a coconut and finds the other half of Laura's locket.
Oh, man, we'll get to that. Thank you, Alan, for that summary. Okay, so Charlie, before we get too far into the discussion, can you just let folks know about your personal background with Twin Peaks? How much have you seen? When did you see it? You know, all that stuff.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I saw Twin Peaks first, like, early in college, and I watched season 1, and it was amazing, and I couldn't figure out, like, I didn't have the words to explain why it was compelling, because it's like, I feel like I'm watching, like, a soap opera, but it's weird, but it's pulling me in. And then, like, last year, at your urging, I watched season 1 again, then I watched halfway through season 2, and then I stopped, and then I watched the finale of season 2, and That's as much as I've watched.
So you kind of got the perfect cut.
Yeah.
The perfect cut.
Just what the doctor ordered.
Just what Dr. Jacoby ordered for you.
All right, the middle of season 2. And then you have not seen Twin Peaks: The Return, right?
Have not seen it.
Okay, cool. Good to know. And we said last week, but our spoiler policy for folks listening is we're not going to spoil anything during the show, but if we do say any spoilers, those will happen at the very end of the show after all of the outro and all that stuff. So if we want to have a related to season 2 discussion a little later, we can, but we won't right now. Cool. So Alan, what were your thoughts on Traces to Nowhere overall?
I was really pulled in by this episode. I love Twin Peaks. I've said it before. It's one of my favorite shows, and it's reminding me again why I like it so much. Like Charlie was saying, that soap opera vibe is very unique, and it's, very 90s to have all these people like espousing their big emotions and it, just saying everything that comes to their mind to each other. But I love that, and I find it so interesting, and it becomes very clear in these episodes that, we're only on, the second full, episode, whatever you want to call it, of the series, and already you can tell that the Laura Palmer murder mystery is the bottom priority of this entire show. I think that is where you get a lot of the conflict between Frost and Lynch, because Lynch is trying to tell this, and then they both understand it, and who is responsible for what is in question, but Lynch seems to be more interested in the sort of mystical stuff and the character stuff, and Frost is like, I have to tell this important story and tie it back to all this lore, and he's the one who writes the books that explain a lot of this weird stuff, but when it comes to just juicy, characterful moments, this episode is what you're looking for, and I liked it a lot for that. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I felt similarly. I think honestly in this watch I was struck more by the ways that you could take this show as being about the mystery. I think we have the benefit of hindsight and having seen it before to know that that's not necessarily the most important part, and also the benefit of the cultural conversations that have happened around Twin Peaks. But the show seems to be putting in the effort to make it plausible that any number of characters could have killed Laura Palmer. Just the way that they sort of isolate different individuals in this episode in particular and outline here's how they were related to Laura. Going so far as to have something happen like she was tutoring Josie in English, which feels completely out of left field. But seems to be there just so that you could plausibly say, maybe Josie was the killer. I don't know. I don't know. It just is kind of strange to watch this and to see them, emphasize that detective aspect of the plot in this episode, especially more so than the next one we watched. I think this feels like more by the numbers police procedural, at least on the surface. But there's obviously weird stuff happening too.
I think this episode's also responsible for the part of Twin Peaks that gets parodied a lot. Not only when we talk about the next episode, the dream sequences, but also just the way that people in this town are strange, especially Cooper and his obsession with coffee and his morning routine. I feel like that started to really crystallize in this episode, how when he goes to the Double R Diner, his whole priority is this cherry pie. And it's that's why we love pie in Twin Peaks fandom, because, Cooper is just into that Americana, the idea of food that's homemade and special. That's a theme that comes back over and over again in Twin Peaks is what's something that people made, and whether it's this coffee is good because it's, it's hot later on. He just is so interested in the food and drink that he consumes here and experiencing the wonders of this town. And so I think that stuff is very clear in this episode.
There's actually a moment really early in the episode that I have here related to that.
Who's the lady with the log?
Nope, sorry. It's this one. It's this one.
Diane, 11.
Nope, it's not that one. I'm so sorry.
My man.
It's this one.
Wait a minute.
Yep.
This is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee. I've had, I can't tell you how many cups of coffee in my life, and this is one of the best. Now, I'd like 2 eggs over hard. I know, don't tell me it's hard
He's
on the
going into
arteries,
his
but old
breakfast
habits
order
die
here.
hard. Just about as hard as I want those eggs. Bacon, super crispy, almost burned.
Cremated.
Cremated. That's great. And I'll have the grapefruit juice. Just as long as those grapefruits are freshly squeezed.
Why'd you have to keep the
Seeing
gross
Audrey
part?
walk in. Well, because I think it's, I mean, let's have a discussion about this. Food and the like sort of sensational nature of food shows up constantly throughout the show. And like, why? Why does it show up so much? Why is he always eating? Why is he like aroused by eating and using the word hard like 4 times in that sentence?
Over hard.
Like, what do we think is the purpose of food showing up so often in Twin Peaks?
I think Cooper's a sensualist. Like he's a Whitman-esque person who just wants to taste everything, to try everything once in his life, and he remembers things really well, and that's something that I actually like about Cooper a lot. It makes him very empathetic. Is that he's always listening, he's always trying things, and he remembers things really well. And I think it's very important to his character that he like cares about things like the way he has his eggs. Over hard, by the way, not that delicious of a way to make your eggs. It's kind of, I think it's a little gross.
What does that mean?
So eggs
hard.
over easy basically means that you do a scrambled egg and then you flip it and you fry the yolk directly. And if you fry it for a little while, then it's over easy. But if you leave it until the yolk is like basically fully solid, that's over hard. So it's like a hard.
Charlie didn't like that.
No, it's eggs with a hard yolk. It's not my favorite at all.
Yeah, it's not my favorite.
It just sounds like a flat hard.
You kind of get like a disc of egg, basically, if you fry both sides of it properly. It's
Don't want.
How do you like your eggs, Charlie?
I like over easy.
Okay.
Over easy's nice. I like fried.
Yep.
Fried is nice. I like a 7-minute egg. Do you know a 7-minute
I'm not
egg?
familiar. What's a 7-minute egg?
You kind of hard boil it, but you leave the inside still going to be runny, so it's kind of a gummy hard boil.
Okay, sure.
Like you might have in a wonderful rice bowl, for example.
I like it.
And what I was gonna say about Michelle, do you have something to say about
No,
that?
go ahead.
I was just gonna say back to Twin Peaks
You
for a
sound
second.
like you're on NPR right now.
I know, I'm really enjoying this microphone.
Lovely 7-minute egg.
I'm just liking this microphone too much right now. Yeah, one thing that it does for the show is that it gives Twin Peaks in this whole like more rural area or exurban or whatever something to offer Dale. Like it needs to be that he doesn't come from the city and it's like this sucks, food sucks, people sucks. He actually comes and finds it kind of better in every way, and the food is an easy way to show that. It's like I come here and I have something I can never get in the city.
Huh. And he's also taking joy in like very simple food too, right? Like he's just
Yeah.
having black coffee.
Just the elemental stuff is better here.
Huh. That's interesting.
That's a great point. Yeah,
Water, the coffee.
We don't think about where Cooper comes from previously, but yeah, definitely like this is stuff I can't get elsewhere. I can't go to the bodega and get eggs over hard. This is the way I want it.
Yeah.
You'd get laughed out of that place.
You really would. You really would.
And it ties to him taking so much joy in like the species of tree and the pilot and
Yeah.
Yeah.
that kind of stuff too. Yeah.
His relationship to the whole area is super important.
And it's always
He loves it.
It's so fun to me that Truman loves that stuff. He just eats it up. He's watching like this. We get to the sheriff's office after he talks about his food or whatever. And by the way, let's actually briefly conclude this diner scene by talking about how the whole Audrey Mellons thing.
Yeah. So I just want to put some numbers in people's heads real quick.
Yeah.
here,
Give him the
because
facts.
The Cooper.
What kind of numbers?
Yeah.
The Cooper Audrey relationship is uncomfortable to me. So I did some math, and Dale Cooper as a character is born in 1954, which means that he's about 35 at the time of the show. Kyle MacLachlan is about 30. Audrey Horne was born in 1970, so she's about 19.
Yeah.
And Sherilyn Fenn is 24. So both of them are like 5 years closer to each other than their characters are, but their characters are like 15 years apart, which is I don't know, a little a little weird, especially in the context of a show where like the central plot is about this violence that was done to a young girl
Right.
that definitely has like sexual components to it. And it makes you wonder about, it's just weird.
We're sort of supposed to root for it or like enjoy the temptation for Dale and be like, okay, and I mean, I don't want to get into too much where it goes, but yeah, it's presented in like such a sweet way of like, oh, look at these two and they're poor.
He still enjoys pleasures of the. I hate to say it this way. I love to say it this way. Let's be real.
Yeah, no need. no need. I was going to say they had in the trivia on Amazon, the introduction of a sexual rapport between the characters of Audrey and Dale was a suggestion of director Dwayne Dunham. Dunham felt that the central mystery in the series was simply a MacGuffin to compel what he saw as a real focus, the interaction of the larger ensemble cast.
Right. Bingo.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. I guess we'll follow the relationship as it develops or doesn't.
I find Audrey more fascinating in this watch than I have previously because, like, you know, she's distractingly beautiful and like wears these iconic outfits, and people always talk about like her great hair and her dance in the second episode. Like all this stuff around like the aesthetic of Audrey Horne, but like Audrey is a person deeply sad, deeply like unfulfilled at home and with her personal life, and so she looks towards like being mysterious and attracting older men and like doing this because that's what she is, that's what's available to her. That's like the skill set that's here is like, well, I flirt with this older guy because that's what I like and that's what I know how to do. Because like we have a shot when she gets home where it's just like her sitting with like her dad who doesn't care about his family, her mom who is like stretched to the point of her limit, and her brother who has his own mental health issues, and she's just like, I don't know where I belong. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. And so the only way she can lash out is by being this character. And I find that so interesting in this viewing. But the way that complicates itself later, I think it's something that I can't keep a pin in. But it's right now, it's like in my back of my head.
Yeah, I don't think we need to talk about it too much longer because there is stuff in the second episode that you know develops this. But I think the first time that I watched Twin Peaks when I was however old we were, like 21 or 22 or whatever it was, I think I didn't consider how young of a character Audrey is because she was basically our age and Sherilyn Fenn is like an adult. But on rewatching it, I think the way that I'm interpreting Audrey is she's like very self-consciously and anxiously like playing an adult.
Yes.
Which is, an angle on her character that I didn't understand before. And it's interesting and adds to the sort of uncomfiness, which is the point of Twin Peaks, or like one of the points of it. But I don't know. It just, the Cooper Audrey thing feels a lot like Jeff and Annie from Community, where it's like, the actors have great chemistry and the actors are like close enough in age, but the characters are not. And this is, anyway, so. But yeah, so you were setting us up to get to the sheriff's office, which has another great food moment.
Yes. Cooper walks into the sheriff's office like a bat out of hell. Can you give me a clip of that, please?
Yeah, so it starts with him walking in. I actually grabbed him talking to Lucy because Lucy's part was my favorite here.
Yeah.
Morning, Deputy. Hey, Lucy. I'll look for him in the conference room.
Like, it's...
Hey, 3 for 3.
Here it is.
Sheriff, let's get James Hurley up from cell 4 and talk to him straight. He was in love with Laura Palmer. My bet is she told him whatever dirt she knew about Mike and Bobby and who knows what else. Then let's have a little chat with those two perpetrators. Let's also run a top to bottom on Bobby's vehicle, see what that brings us. We'll also check on the autopsy on Laura Palmer and see what that brings in. Oh, we're also going to want to talk to Mr. and Mrs. Palmer, but let's give them a few days to deal with their grief. Now, I've got the rest of our day mapped out. Let's meet back here in 3 minutes. Harry, I really have to urinate. Oh, by the way, coffee at the Great Northern, incredible.
There it is. Yeah, nasty man.
That's my one.
Well, that gulp says
Almost
everything.
Almost as good of a bodily sound as when Ben Horn spits in the first episode.
I thought you were gonna play the clip again. I was gonna. No! That's the worst.
Sorry. Still have it. Don't worry. I'll delete it soon. That's the last time you'll hear that noise.
we have better disgusting Ben Horn moments to talk about later. But yeah, like Truman, like imagine it's like 7 a.m. and I just always try to think about like Truman's perspective on Cooper. Like, what does he actually think this guy's deal is? Because it's like, good morning, Cooper, and before doesn't even say good morning to you. He's like, we have 7 different tasks, and I need to pee, and we got to go here, here, and here. The coffee was great. Hi, bye. Okay, and you're like, I'm not even like I haven't even started waking up yet. Like it's just
And everybody, it's a really fun moment to show you that even though, like what you were saying, Charlie, Cooper is like falling in love with Twin Peaks, he's still out of step with it in terms of like the pace at which he moves. Because everybody in the sheriff's office has agreed that this is the hour where they just fill their face with food and they're not expecting to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Like you see before Cooper walks in, Truman shoves like half of the pastry in his mouth, like as much of it as will fit, because he's like, work hasn't started yet.
Yeah.
I have to eat now.
I mean, that's why it's so important that Cooper, everybody knows that Cooper loves it here so much, because otherwise he'd just be like a douchebag.
Right.
Just coming in and talking too fast and being like, you guys catch up. But instead it's like, I love it here. This is my gear.
Right. That's what contrasts him and Albert, who we meet in the second episode, where you're like, okay, there's a difference between like coming to this town and being like, oh my God, everything here is so beautiful and better than what I have, and being like, all right, you weird hicks, let's get on to business. And it's like, oh my God, the contrast is made very, very clear here. And we get, contrast throughout this episode in both of them, because contrasts are a big thing in Twin Peaks. But going straight to the Doc Hayward interrogation, which I'll just briefly touch on, talking about like the way that she was wrapped in plastic and how her arms are tied and all that stuff. It's pretty ghoulish, like and like the different ways that she was assaulted and she was like raped by 3 different people, and it's just, this is right after the scene that Magellan just played. And so, like, watching Twin Peaks, you have to kind of accept the hard pivots. It's, like, almost dizzying, how quickly we can go from, like, oh, everything's so quirky here, to, like, this person was raped 3 times. And you're like, well, all right, this is in the same world, and that's the reconciliation that the show is about. It's like those things have always existed under a nice, comfy town like Twin Peaks. Is also, like, people are horrible and do horrible things like it's nothing.
Yeah, I was doing some thinking yesterday. Something else that I've thought a lot about in this second watch is just the like centralness of violence carried out on young women in the show. Like, I hadn't really thought of that as being a central motif the first time I watched, because it's like, oh, it's the weird show where there's dream sequences and a lot of the stuff in the next episode that we'll talk about in the next episode. But like you're saying, Alan, ultimately, I think a big point of Twin Peaks is, and I found this article online that I'll search up and I'll bring up probably in a future episode that informed some of my thinking here. I'll try to get it in the show notes. But it was basically making the point that a lot of what Twin Peaks does is it tries to sort of not make mundane, but make clear how common this sort of violence is, right?
Yeah.
By putting it in the same show where it's like, oh, we're having our muffins and our coffee or whatever, and now we're going to this scene where we're talking about what happened to this girl. It's sort of saying, like, this is a part of what you just said, a part of the same world. This is something that happens much more regularly than people would care to admit. And I think that that's something I didn't appreciate the first time I watched it, but is like a really important point that the show's trying to make.
Absolutely. It's all there. And it's like, you watch the show with a little bit of hindsight and you go, wow, really? They were seeding these things in minute 1. But I imagine, like, as a new viewer, you're just like, yeah, like these types of series, having now seen this like redone and remade and brought into parody now, they're always about the violence done to young people and done to women especially. But seeing it here, it actually feels much more central, like you're saying, than just it's a story about a girl being murdered. Like, it's not just about a girl. It's about like the violence that men do to women overall. You know, not just how Laura Palmer died. That's why I'm saying, like, the one question of, like, how did Laura die or who killed her is not the interesting part. It's everything around that, even though that is at the nexus of it.
And it's sort of like the opposite of a show like, you know, Law and Order SVU or something like that, where that's a show that's also about a similar thing, but it does the sort of TV reset, you know, thing of like, okay, there's a case this episode and now we're going to stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
And this show, it's this one case, and instead of desensitizing the audience to it by taking you through, okay, here's the awful thing of the week, it's like making us extra sensitive to it by dwelling on, here are the ramifications on this person in her life and that person in her life, and oh, this also happened to her. And that's something that's at play here as well.
And they really show you in the first 2 episodes and all throughout the series how like crushingly upsetting it is for everybody in the whole world. And they'll really linger. Like, there are a lot of moments in this episode, even like Ben talking with Audrey about Laura. Everybody is like totally crushed by this.
Yeah.
Laura's mom, the end of the episode. So yeah, it's like these are like really sticky, painful traumas for everybody in town. And we never reset. Nothing's ever like forgotten.
It does, exactly. It's stuck as much as it can be, because that's how it would happen. It ends up being, despite this show having a reputation for being surreal and weird, it's a lot more realistic than the idea of a villain of the week or something. It's very, very serialized, because that's how trauma actually works. It lingers between episodes. Even James, when he's interrogated, feels this sort of like pull from Laura Palmer. Like, she has this magnetism. I think the flashback that we see where she's like talking to him by this tree, and she's like, I'm James, I'm so happy. And he's like, why?
I actually have, if you want to hear it, I actually
Please.
This is him going into his memories right now.
Mind Palace.
James, guess why I'm so happy today?
Because your skin is so soft and you smell so good?
Ugh.
No.
Why?
Because I really believe that you love me. Now my heart belongs to you.
And that's her breaking the heart. Yeah, that moment is the acting is so dorky.
I can never tell if this is a huge question after the show. Like, whether they're kind of making fun of James in that moment and sort of Laura. Like, are they sort of trying to do a parody?
I have a theory about this, and it doesn't require me to spoil anything. I think they do know that that's silly, because this episode ends with Jacoby listening to the recording from Laura where she's like, I'm tired of James's sweetness. I can only take sweet for so long. So in this moment,
but even that's like, oh, it's sweet. Like, oh, it's really, really sweet. It's over the top and nice.
In James's head, in the flashback in James's head, all he saw, because he's ignorant, like, he's a nice boy and he's cool and he's not that exposed to the darkness that's going on in Laura's life. So he sees her say this stuff and he's like, oh, it was so romanticized and like beautiful in my head, and she called me nice and she loves me, whatever. But then you hear it from her perspective when you hear the Jacoby tape, and it's like, ugh, this freaking dude, I'm so sick of his sweetness. Like, get over it. I'm going to the woods for horrible things to happen. And so, like, I think that in a way the show is saying, well, James thinks that this is all kosher, but the reality under the soap opera veneer is actually a lot more sad and dark. That's my take. It's my take.
So it's less about telling us about their relationship and more about telling us about, like, James is just an innocent young man.
Yeah, it's a biased flashback.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the real violence we see. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the reason I clipped it is it gave me serious, like, I hate sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating kind of levels of acting. Actually, a friend of the podcast, Ryan Slowinski, asked me recently, well, we were talking about James over the DMs after the Reset episode 1, and he was like, everybody hates James. And I was like, he's like, I know that you hate James for a fact. And I was like, do I? I don't think I do. And he was like, you literally said it on the last episode that you found him boring. And I was like, I think I have complicated feelings on James that I'm ready to, like,
flesh out in the rewatching of Twin Peaks. Because, like, yeah, the actor, not great. He's a little weird looking, and he delivers everything very flatly and gets he gets the corniest scenes. But I think there's value in having this character who, like, is a teen, is like wrapped up in the lore stuff, but just doesn't get it. Like, he's just missing out on so much that's going on. It's actually valuable to have somebody like that. And like you wrote in your notes, Magellan, he bounces off of Cooper really well here. He actually performs pretty well when talking to Cooper because, like, Kyle MacLachlan pulls that out of people. And that's where I'm like, okay, maybe sometimes James is okay. I know, like, the character, he's goofy. We make fun of him. It's like memes about him, whatever. Yeah, I think he's super goofy, but a lot of the show is goofy and there are things to appreciate in that goofiness.
That's very true, yeah.
I mean, he's... one way I think about it is, like, the show is weird, and it was weird to cast this guy who, like, can't really act. And because it's weird, it's sort of infallible. Because, like, if something's off and the scene is weird because his acting's bad, it's, like, kind of on purpose and part of it, too. Like, there's no way for it to be wrong because it's, like, not meant to be nailing a normal soap opera. So, like, James being bad is sort of perfect and makes it more Twin Peaksy that you have this guy with the weird hair and the big forehead
and a motorcycle.
And
And it's I don't know. I feel like in Lynch stuff, there's this interesting commingling of actors who just, like, the sense that I get of this guy is that he's not doing that fully on purpose. I don't know. I mean, maybe he is, but it's this commingling of people who, like, are just doing that because that's who they are, and people like Kyle MacLachlan who are like, I completely get how to be weird in the right way in this moment. And I find that interesting just as someone who likes to look at, like, performances and something. To see the difference between them.
Very curious if James Marshall is an actor who knows that people make fun of his character, but, like, kind of see it as a joke. And as a less serious, like a dumb character amongst other actors who are doing a lot better. I wonder what he thinks about that these days. Because I'm sure everybody on Twin Peaks is at least somewhat happy to be there, barring, like, some of the cast issues that I know.
David Lynch is a known quantity by this point.
Oh, yeah.
Even when Twin Peaks is coming out. So, I mean, maybe we're selling him short and he knew what he was getting into. I don't know, but...
It's such a great contrast to the Leo plotline, which we can briefly touch on because it's only in this, like, for 2 or 3 scenes. Magellan, I know that you are not a Leo fan. Not that you should be a Leo fan. Not that I'm like, dude, I actually secretly love
Who's
Leo.
a Leo fan? Are you the Leo fan, Alan?
I'm not a Leo fan. I just, again, think that there's value in, like, this guy. This guy isn't hiding anything. He is a piece of trash and is not nice to anyone. He's abusive to his wife extremely. We see a lot of it. It's one of the most horrifying things about the show. And speaking about violence to women, we see a lot of that in their interactions. And Leo is just paranoid and angry and full of rage. And that's all there is to him. He's not complicated. But again, I think that's an example where the actor doesn't bring it and it kind of detracts from the plot line. It doesn't feel realistic the way that he's like, Laura. Not Laura.
Shelly.
Shelly, you gotta
wash my shirt, Shelly.
Wash my shirt. You're washing my shirt. Go back
wash
in.
My boots.
Now you're not done, Shelly.
I mean, my thing with Leo is, like, I do think it's plausible and it's fine for the story to have a guy who's just terrible and cruel and abusive, and, like, people like that exist. People like Leo exist. I think I just want to I want to get more of an understanding of, like, what we can learn from Leo's character about, like, male evil, you know? Because someone like Ben Horn is manipulative and shitty and almost, like, physically harms Audrey. He, like, grabs her by the lapel at one point or something like that. Yeah. But there are layers to Ben Horn where you're like, okay, I can sort of pick apart and understand, like, the depths of this guy's ego and, you know, his motivations, and also, like, how he paints himself as the victim at times, like at the end of that conversation where he's like, I lost you years ago, Audrey. And it's like, it's your fault.
Yeah. Why should I keep being a cool dad if you're going to be awful to me? And it's like, well, again, it's exactly, you neglected me. That's the reason I'm like this.
And I think I just want, and I think we do kind of get a little more of that from Leo in the next episode, but, right now he's a very two-dimensional sort of guy, which I think is fine for now, but I'm just not particularly interested in him as a character.
I still think there's a moment right before the end of this episode where he puts on blues music before winding up a freaking weapon to strike Shelley. And it's so horrifying, but it's the way that Twin Peaks uses music really cleverly, where horrifying things are happening, but they're playing kind of benign blues music. I think that's one of the most scary examples of it. And obviously the Leland scene in the next episode, but they kind of want to say something about, it's the same thing of oh, you just put on the music so that you can't see what's happening, you can't hear what's happening. It's the same idea of the veneer of Twin Peaks is that it's a wholesome, friendly northwestern town, but it's really full of corruption and evil. It's all there.
And there's nothing supernatural or mysterious about that moment either, right?
Yeah.
That's a thing that happened, that Leo did to Shelley, that happens in real life. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a valuable thing for the show to portray. And I think the show does a good job of getting into Shelley's character and giving us her interiority. And maybe that's more important than Leo's interiority at the end of the day anyway. So
yeah,
that's why I'm I don't feel super strongly about, Leo as a character.
Is Leo also the only character we get? Can we find any other characters who aren't affected by Laura's death? Who aren't emotionally oh,
that's
Laura.
interesting.
Well, I mean, Leo is business-wise, obviously. In the second episode, we see that he's missing money because of her.
Yeah. But I mean, everybody else we get
Yeah.
emotional beats of even the the tougher characters Laura.
Right. Yeah, I think he is somebody who's just I do business here. She's a girl that owes me money. I don't care that she died. That doesn't affect me. I still do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, his 2D-ness feels like it comes from the most 2D soap opera. It's coming from a different kind of show.
Yeah.
Also, his truck says "Big Pussycat" on the side of it.
Good.
Let's be Honey Aurelio's. It does say that.
Yeah.
Also, he does his laundry outside.
Yeah, that seems difficult in the winter. What are you supposed to do there?
Just go really fast. Do your best.
Well, the house is under some sort of construction or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, it did look like that.
Yeah.
Some sort of renovation.
Can we talk about...
I don't want to spoil whether or not we later learn all about the renovation.
Yeah. They're building a coffin. No.
I don't want to give it away.
Can we talk about my favorite teenagers plotline of this season so far?
Yeah, which one is that?
Donna Hayward is so interesting to me on this rewatch. I never thought about her because, she's not exactly a player in the main mystery plotline that I remember, but, her conversation with her mom in this one, first of all, outfit check. Big, basketball jersey and white stockings. Hockey jersey and stockings. Wow, that's a lot. That's incredible.
That's weird. It's a 90s look.
But she's telling her mom, the thing that you called me at the beginning, I feel like I'm having the most beautiful dream and terrible nightmare because I can finally be with the guy I love, but it means that my best friend just died. And I'm I'm a little happy about that, but I feel bad that I'm happy about that. That's so interesting and nuanced in a way that shows like this don't ever really get into. Sometimes, even if you didn't commit the murder, and maybe if you're watching this trying to find the killer, you might think, oh, maybe Donna could have somehow did it or been involved because she's happy about it. She had a motive to do it. She wanted to be with James.
And it gets at, this show being a show that's ultimately about the sort of ripple effects or ramifications of a horrible event, that this is part of the way that Donna's processing her grief is by sort of finding safety in this new relationship.
Yeah.
That's a way that she's pulling away from her feelings about Laura's death. And I think it's seeing different characters process this event differently, I think is also of literary value. Absolutely. And it makes them interesting in different ways.
Yeah. Yep. The teen plot lines all go in their own directions, but the Donna stuff very specifically being about love in a tender, youthful, ignorant way, I actually really appreciate. And they don't like connect her to Cooper in ways that feel inappropriate either. But I also don't remember much else about the Donna plotline other than her and James back and forthing for what feels like forever, to be honest with you. Gosh, there's so many things. We have Truman telling Cooper that he's starting to feel like Dr. Watson, which I'm going to check off in my I ship Cooper and Truman checklist, of course. We have Josie, who
We learned that.
Oh, yeah.
We learned that Truman and Ed are like buddies, which I didn't expect. And they're like talking about the affairs that they're having.
Yeah.
Truman's like, so how's your affair going, bud? And also we learned that Ed is James's uncle.
Yeah.
So they're just sort of drawing more connections between all the different characters.
And there's the coconut resonant. There's coconut sort of a theme throughout.
If we could just listen to this line real quick.
Hey, Ed. How's that coconut?
It was kind of tender.
And that comes back at the
Because
end of the
later we
episode.
see the most tender coconut of all.
The
which
Jacoby
is
coconut.
The coconut that holds part of a heart.
Yeah. Oh, tender, like a heart. I got it. Got it.
Wow, what great writing. That's good.
And that's something I think if I watch it back through with you guys this time, I'll keep an eye for other coconut stuff.
Please, thank you. Like Jacoby stuff is interesting. But can we talk about the more violence towards? Well, not violence towards women. This is more systemic violence towards women. Nadine is quickly becoming one of the characters that I sympathize with the most. Poor Nadine. This beautiful, incredible, eye patch wearing, super powered woman who can break an exercise machine with her hands. She just wants to invent something so that her and her wonderful husband Ed, who she loves, can be rich. She wants to make silent drape runners. He doesn't love her. Straight up, I think, or maybe it's more complicated than that. I think that Big Ed loved Nadine and feels complicated about things with her now because of this affair, because of his guilt for participating in an affair. He wants to love her, but he feels so distant from her because of her personality quirks and just the way that she acts around the house that it's easier for him to just dissociate and distance himself from her as much as possible.
Yeah, and he seems like he's like a responsible guy. I think he feels an obligation to take care of her or something. But yeah, he doesn't love her romantically anymore.
And the show doesn't give us anything for her. Like you can watch it with this sympathetic eye, but like she is never given. I mean, at least in this episode, you're looking at her. You're never like seeing her interiority.
You're looking at her the same way you look at like the log lady or something, where it's like, oh, another one of these fringe characters who's strange.
Yeah, has the one thing about them.
Yeah.
I really appreciate Nadine and I like that actress a lot. I think she's great. And just seeing a husband like be neglectful in that way, it's a pretty mature and adult plot line though. To be like, well, my wife has this weird quirk that makes me feel distant from her, so instead I engage in an affair to feel something. Like, that's some adult shit. I have to say it. It's sad and we don't talk about it a lot, but it's true. It's the darkness underneath the surface again. And I find that stuff actually a lot more engaging than, this plotline that we keep wanting to talk around, but we have to bring up briefly here. The sawmill stuff. So first of all, one of my favorite details about the sawmill, David Lynch loves his sound design. Every time we're near the sawmill or we're with Pete Martell, he mentions the very first line of the series. He talks about the tugboats, signaling the beginning of the day. They have a tugboat that just honks every like couple of seconds.
Constantly.
It's awesome. I love it.
Goodness.
Johnny, you're not a fan of this.
Stand it. It's like cicadas in an anime or something like that.
Yeah, I love cicadas in an anime.
No, it drives me nuts.
You just watched Evangelion, which has the most cicadas in any anime.
Yeah, obnoxious cicadas.
True. But yeah, Catherine and a mysterious man clink glasses together, who we find out like 2 minutes later is our boy Ben Horn.
It's Ben Horn. They really don't try to keep that a secret.
I wrote in my notes, I was like, who's this mysterious man? And then before I even finished writing mysterious man, I was like, oh, it's Ben. Okay. And they film the actress playing Catherine Martell in a very sensual way because they're flirting. He's kissing her toes. Shout outs to Ben Horn, gang.
The way that she was wearing the blanket made no physical sense whatsoever.
It looks like a dress.
It looked like it was wrapped once and then wrapped again and had like big shoulder pads or something. Yeah.
Nasty game.
It was like, how did you get into that blanket configuration?
I adore it. I think that David Lynch understands that older women can be like beautiful and like sexually attractive, and he's like, yeah, I know what I'm trying to do here. Like, these are two adults who don't care about what people think about them, enjoying their power and wealth. Because Ben Horn like kind of summarizes his character here, where he says like, I consider business and pleasure to be the same thing. Period. That I don't have to separate those things in my life because nobody's gonna stop me because I have power. I'm a man in this world. I can go to places like One Eye Jack's next episode and be like, well, that's what I do, and I'm also a dad. Screw you. And I'm also a business owner. Like, he just does not care for the niceties of this town or this world that he lives in. But yeah, basically, I think they're going to burn. They talk about like, oh, we could burn it or something, and it's like, I don't know, what's going on. This just feels like soap opera stuff for the sake of soap opera stuff.
I don't know. What do you think of the mill stuff, Charlie?
The mill stuff blows. The mill stuff, just like as a plot, it really reminds me of like doing improv, where it's like, I guess there's mill and it's gonna burn and it's not good. But it's like, what do we care about the mill?
Yeah, come on, mill.
Yeah. But the thing that caught my eye about that scene is when he's like, now I remember how all those hours turned into days, like as he's gonna go in for a smooch, and like how it was such a soap opera-y boring scene, but something about that line was like compelling to me, where it's like a little ominous. We're not really watching like a soap opera, like, cool, more cast members making out, I love to see it. It's like this kind of creepy little beat, and that line is like better than it had to be, kind of like they wrote this kind of interesting little line in there for him. So that just felt like where the show kind of slips into, it's a soap opera, but it's better and more ominous than a soap opera.
It has higher reaches than a soap opera. It reaches for more.
And I think the thing that it takes from soap opera that's sort of fun and compelling is, you know, in a lot of other moments where people are having a little tryst or something, you can tell that they are expressing genuine emotion, like when Shelley's with Bobby or James is with Donna or Norma's with Ed or whatever. You think, okay, these people really are stealing away moments to be with each other because they really want to be. But when Ben and Catherine are together, you have no idea how genuine either one of them is being. It seems like maybe Catherine is being a little more genuine than Ben is.
It's just power stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's, you know, depending on how we read Catherine, maybe that's like something that's upsetting her a little bit, is the way that he thinks of business and pleasure as the same thing, because then it means that like, it's like you're saying, it's all about the power play. Even these like intimate moments that they're having and him kissing the toe and saying like, and now let's have more sex. Do you know, why are you doing this? What is there sort of any genuine emotion here? And I think that shows up in what we learn about Laura as well.
Yeah.
And like, what she says to James, what she says to Dr. Jacoby, what are her genuine emotions? So I think that's, you know, this scene and the Laura stuff has us starting to question when a character says like, oh, I love you or whatever, how do we know that they're telling the truth? Exactly.
Yeah, I think where Twin Peaks becomes more of a feminist text is how certain women in the show understand their position and how they're being manipulated and choose to hide things and choose to be duplicitous to those men because they're like, well, you don't control me. And Laura is a strong example of that.
Right.
There is the moment that we can briefly touch on where Donna visits the Palmer family to offer her sympathy because of the death of her best friend. And, you know, I don't want to be the person who harps on the show for having bad CG. And this scene is like emotionally potent, but Sarah Palmer looks at Donna, says like, thank you for being here. And then she looks away and looks back, and Laura's face, like the actress who plays Laura Palmer's face is on Lara Flynn Boyle's face. And it looks like crap. I'm sorry. But before you even have time to think it looks like crap, just Sarah looks down and there's a freaking man. There's a freaking hairy, fuzzy man looking at her in the eye. Hey, what's up? Terrifying.
Yeah, and it like, maybe there's a little zoom on him.
Yeah. Oh, David
Yeah.
Lynch has the zoom like nailed down. The jump cut and the zoom, he's masterclass. Because a lot of this show is actually like filmed with static shots. That's like what Lynch does really well. Is just like, you know, framed paintings almost, or filmed paintings. But like when you see this man like down there, you're like, oh, so what is Sarah like compartmentalizing? What is she not seeing, or what is she looking at? Who is this person? It's so creepy. But
To me, like,
Yeah.
the guy is not that creepy. But her face and her reaction is really horrifying.
Grace Zabriskie,
It's almost hard to watch.
similar to the woman who plays the, I should look up her name, who plays the wife in The Shining, Shelley Duvall. Both of them are just really good at screaming, like really good at screaming. Grace Zabriskie like looks genuinely terrified when she sees this guy. I want to talk about that stuff in a little bit, but just to get through the rest of the episode quickly, like I said, Hank interviews Ronette Pulaski's parents. We didn't mention that we kind of might have stumbled on this last week, but Ronette Pulaski is alive. She's in the hospital.
Yeah, I think we misstated that last week.
No, she's alive, and her parents talk about how she like quit her job at this perfume place recently, and what's going on with the perfume store. There's the one.
Her parents, Janik and Suburbus.
No way.
Their names.
Janik and Suburbus.
I know Janik. I didn't know about Suburbus. That's awesome.
Okay.
Sorry.
Awesome.
There's a one-armed.
Just wanted to
Good
get
piece
that.
of trivia.
There's a one-armed man in the hospital going towards the morgue. We have no idea what's up with that, but Hawk just kind of files that away mentally. Audrey and Ben have an argument that we talked about earlier. He says, Laura died 2 years ago and I lost you years ago. Just establishing that he thinks about them both as like these important figures in his life, right? And also that he feels distance from his daughter, but it's his fault, not necessarily anything else. More parent stuff. We get a brief introduction of one of my favorite side characters on Twin Peaks, Major Briggs, Bobby's father. He is so mad at his son. He's like, why are you always out? Why are you such a bad kid? I can't believe you're the way you are. And Bobby lights a cigarette at the dinner table, and he slaps a cigarette out of his mouth, and it lands in his mom's meatloaf, and she spends the rest of the scene picking it out of the meatloaf. I love the Briggs family. I think Major Briggs is just such a fascinating character because he's the military dad, but he's like kind of spiritual. We see in this scene where he's talking about like the different like aspects of life, and it's like, oh, there's something so actually like loving and kind about him, and I feel like Bobby doesn't recognize that he has like a cool dad. But also there's just a distance there that they can't cross, like the difference between the father and son there. But that's all we get from them. And Shelley and Cooper meet briefly, the log ladies in the Double R. He eats 3 pieces of cherry pie. He eats one and then says, order me 2 more. And then Truman's saying what I'm saying, where he's like, you must have the metabolism of a bumblebee. And he's like, I don't know.
In that same diner scene, we get a very cryptic conversation with the log lady, which I can just play briefly here.
Do it.
One day, my log will have something to say about this. My log saw something that night.
Really? What did it see?
Ask it. I thought so.
Who knows what that could mean?
Ask it.
But we'll learn more about that later, I'm sure.
For sure. And then, yeah, Jacoby. The only thing I want to add about the final Jacoby scene is that the accoutrement in his room is incredible. He, like, is all about the Hawaiian aesthetic. He has a Hawaiian room. He has coconuts that he holds things in. Why is he like this? It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. It's not even like we're not spoiling things. This is definitely one of those, like, he's just a little weird.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, he finds the locket. So is Dr. Jacoby involved in Laura Palmer's murder? Who could say? Folks, do we have any stray notes on this episode?
We zoomed past
the fish in the percolator
the best line in the episode.
Yes.
So when Cooper and Truman go to talk to Josie Packard, and have like a nothing conversation with her, except that Cooper's like, hey, you guys boning? Oh, I figured it out from your body language. They're having coffee, and then Pete Martell says,
Fellas, don't drink that coffee. You'd never guess. There was a fish in the percolator.
A fish.
his delivery is incredible. Incredible stuff.
Apparently that was inspired by David Lynch having that happen, or someone told him that happened to them. Or no, it was. Let me actually get the text of this correct, because I don't want to quote this. And
it wasn't a fish.
It's soap.
Yeah.
It was soap in the percolator, right?
Yeah.
The origin of the fish in the percolator comes from a past experience of David Lynch. During breakfast at the studio of his friend Bushnell Keeler, he discovered that he and David Keeler drank coffee made with a bar of soap in the percolator. Gross. Really gross.
Oh. Do you just have that open there already?
Do I just have what, the wiki?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a seamless edit, but
Right.
Charlie, thank you. I appreciate it. I just have it up all the time.
That's good.
This episode had a little bit of trivia, mostly about the production, but nothing too crucial that I wanted to bring up. It was a well-rated episode, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, Fish in the Percolator, iconic line. Thank you for reminding us to bring that up, Magellan. And then Cooper later being like, I got to get that percolator fish coffee out of my mouth. It tastes like fish, fishy coffee. You could also overanalyze this and say the evil that's inside of the normal, there's fish in the percolator.
Fish. Yeah.
I can't dig too deep into stuff like that, because then I go full Mark Frost brain and I'm like, is the fish from the FBI? Is it telling him a message? And I can't do that. I cannot. Yeah, that's what I have for this episode. Can we first take it to a musical break, and we'll be back to discuss Zen and...
Well, wait, we're about to say goodbye to Charlie.
Yeah.
So we should ask Charlie.
Oh, yeah.
If there's anything you want our listeners to go check out, and if you have a chatsome and all that stuff.
Oh, I have an upcoming project I'm excited about, but it's not available yet, about climate. I'll have my chatsome related to that too.
Okay.
I'm building a website that will give you a prediction about how any place in the U.S. will change after 100 years of climate change. And the book that I would recommend to everybody to read still 2 years after it came out is The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells. It totally made thinking about climate change like the front of my brain for,
Forever.
Forever. For the last few years. And his New York Magazine coverage is really great too. And it's an alarming book, and I think everybody has a sense that they know some spooky stuff about climate change, and everyone's like, okay, I don't really need to read because I know how bad it is, but it's worse than you think.
Yeah.
So that's my chatsome.
What is it called again?
And it's called The Uninhabitable Earth.
Okay.
David Wallace Wells. Little dead bumblebee on the front, like Cooper.
Oh, man. That's fantastic, Charlie. Thank you. The reason I kind of fumbled that is because I also want to talk some brief spoiler stuff with the two of you, but we will save that for the post-pod. So if you're listening to this episode in linear order, then we'll be right back to discuss Zen, or the skill to catch a killer.
Diane, 2:44 p.m. I'm speaking to you having just left the laundromat, where I dropped off my mentionables and a good share of my unmentionables as well. And don't worry, Diane, I don't use my real name there. They know me as Jeff. I'm on my way now to a mailbox. I find myself in need of dropping off a physical letter. Can you believe that, Diane? A physical letter. Had my life played out differently, I think I might have been a postman instead of an FBI man. I mean, just imagine it, Diane. The chance to connect lives from different parts of the country, to meet people on their doorstep, to have one of those big trucks with the steering wheel on the wrong side. Anyway, I think I picked the career that's going to end up lasting a longer time, as unfortunate as that might be. You know what I was struck by today, Diane? As I was leaving my apartment, I walked by a building that experienced a fire a couple of years ago, and only today were they installing a new door. It's amazing how even in a city so fast, things can sometimes move pretty slow. Well, that's all I've got for now. I need to see a mailbox about a letter, and then a bed about a nap. Talk to you soon, Diane.
Diane, it is 6:16 p.m. The weather has finally let up today, and I was able to enjoy a brisk jog on the way to and from the barber shop. I recently switched to a new barber named Rich, because he's one of the best barbers I've ever had. He's friendly, quick, a good listener, and he runs a good shop. You know, I think about what makes a good barbershop, Diane, and honestly, it's all about the mood. I mean, sure, there were police patches framed on the wall and other dated remnants of Americana adorning the walls, but this shop felt like home. Everybody says hello when you walk in, Diane. It's incredible. I think we should all feel at home somewhere. Whether it's the local barbershop or the place where you rest that newly trimmed head, home is where people treat you like you. I'll be continuing my investigation of the concept of home and get back to you soon. I'm going to be catching a film at the local theater tonight, Diane. I was thinking Fellini, maybe. For now, though, this is Agent Allen, signing off.
Welcome back to Peaks Chats. For the second half of our discussion this week, we're joined by another special guest. She's my cousin. It's logo designer of the pod, Camilla.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here.
Welcome, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well.
We're excited to have you, Camilla.
I'm very excited to be here.
Your first appearance on Chats, a television podcast, is that correct?
Yes, in spoken word, if not in written word.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You sent in a phenomenal email when we did Angels in Chats America.
I wrote just like a small thesis paper about it. Turns out I have a lot of feelings.
Yeah, and it was a very, very helpful email for us in discussing the show, so we appreciated that. And then, yeah, as Alan said, you also are the designer of our logo, our podcast art, which is great. And we get to thank you in person on the pod for designing that for us years ago.
Oh, shucks.
It's dope.
It's an incredible logo. I've never sent somebody so many Nerf logos and been like, make something out of this, please.
It was a lot of Nerf logos from different decades.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But we have you here today to discuss an excellent episode of Twin Peaks. We are specifically talking about Zen, or the Skill to Catch a Killer, which, like most episodes of Twin Peaks, is directed by David Lynch and written by Mark Frost and David Lynch. This episode aired April 19th, 1990. And Magellan, can you please tell me what happened in Zen, or the Skill to Catch a Killer?
In this episode, Jerry Horn arrives in Twin Peaks and brings delicious brie and butter sandwiches for him and his sweet brother Ben. They catch up in private on business and personal affairs before taking a boat to One-Eyed Jack's, a brothel/casino located on the Canadian border. They meet the owner of the establishment, Blackie O'Reilly. Mike and Bobby are let out of holding, and they sneak out at night to finish a drug deal with Leo, which goes poorly when Bobby sees a mysterious figure in the woods, and Leo realizes that they don't have Laura's half of the money. Ed spills grease on Nadine's cotton balls, and this proves to be the secret key to making her drape runners silent. Outside of the sheriff's office, Cooper convinces the gang to indulge him in an unconventional method of narrowing the suspects down to Leo Johnson and Dr. Jacoby. In the Double R Diner, Audrey reveals to Donna that she has a crush on Agent Cooper, and she avoids questions about Laura by dancing to mysterious jazz music. Albert Rosenfield arrives in Twin Peaks to help with the investigation. Back at the Blue Pine Lodge, Pete and Catherine discuss Cooper's presence in town, and Pete slips a key to Josie nearby so she can open Catherine's safe. She finds 2 copies of the ledgers, suggesting collusion at the sawmill. Leland Palmer is still grieving the death of his daughter, and he dances with a picture of her. Sarah tries to intervene, but he smashes the photo and spills blood on it. Finally, Cooper gets some sleep, and we see his surreal dream sequence. The one-armed man identifies himself as Mike, and the long-haired man that Sarah keeps seeing is called Bob. Suddenly, Cooper is much older and sitting in a room surrounded by red curtains. While a little person dances nearby, a woman who looks like Laura Palmer whispers something into his ear. Cooper then wakes up and calls Truman, revealing that he knows who killed Laura Palmer. So, kind of a filler episode, I think.
Totally forgettable.
So, Camilla, you requested to be on for this one. I'm curious if you could tell the folks why, of all episodes, this random one, and what's your sort of personal history with Twin Peaks?
Yeah. Why this episode of all the episodes? Why this filler episode in which nothing memorable in TV history happens at all? Yeah. I guess contextually, my history with Twin Peaks is that I think I started watching it just on Netflix one night. A few years ago, it took me a while to get into the show, in part because my understanding or my expectation of what the show would be based on what I'd heard about it and sort of about its cultural footprint didn't entirely line up with what the pilot was, despite the pilot being very good. And I circled back around to it eventually, and this was the episode where I thought, oh, this is what I've heard Twin Peaks is, where you kind of know what you're in for. Because what surprised me about the pilot is that it's as weird as this world is, as odd as some of these characters are, it's a pretty devastatingly emotionally raw look at characters grieving.
Yeah. Right.
Which wasn't what I expected from paranormal, quirky murder mystery. And so this is where the show, I think, threads the needle of the implicit weirdness becomes explicit in a way that is really, really interesting and fun and carries the show for so long. I don't believe that I have finished season 2 of the show. I did trail off at a certain point. I have seen most of the show, and it's been really fun to revisit these beginning moments.
Yeah, it feels like this episode is where someone's putting their foot on the gas a little bit, and it's funny to me that we're now 0-3 for guests who have like watched season 2 in its entirety, because I know like for people who haven't watched the show before, the show had a lot of network intervention and also ratings issues, which we can get into a little bit more. But basically, one of the bullet point reasons is that it was event television in the sense that people would gather together and watch it like as a group. But Nielsen ratings in the 90s didn't know how to account for that. So it actually like reflected as pretty poorly rated, even though like tons of people were gathering together to watch Twin Peaks. And it became this cult classic show because like people were so interested in the questions surrounding the marketing. So like this first season is cut short, and the second season was ordered for 22 episodes or however many, 20 something, which leads to it feeling kind of padded, and that's why people drop off of season 2. I'm excited to get there because I think it's still interesting, but you know, a lot's going to happen between now and then. And you know, watching Zen or The Skill to Catch a Killer, you start to see the portrait of like, oh, they can just kind of go. They have like, we have barely even touched anything yet.
Yeah, it feels like at this point they've given you time to buckle your seatbelt, and now they're like Thelma and Louise in it, just like into the unknown.
I was really, startled, to be honest, by just how much happens by this point in the show. Like there is plenty that hasn't been touched on yet, but this metaphor of hitting the gas, car going off the cliff, at the end of it I was like, oh my god, wait, we're already seeing like the Red Room, and we're seeing these guys, and all this stuff is going on in episode 3.
He knows who killed Laura Palmer.
Yeah. So I can understand why it becomes hard, and we'll talk about this as we watch through the show and get to the doldrums of season 2, but I can understand why it becomes difficult for the show to maintain that level of like unveiling and introducing things, because I mean this episode is the kind of episode that like maybe nowadays, in the day of the sort of like bingeable Netflix show, they would do something like this in a third episode, but over the last couple decades, with serialized television, I feel like a show would save an episode like this for mid-season or late season or something like that, and make you wait for, I don't know, for reveals and for moments like this.
Yeah, it feels like we're the downside of this is we're hitting the gas too hard, and we're gonna to just never drop this metaphor. We're gonna run out of gas at some point and just kind of be like on fumes for a while. So I want to start by talking about the intro, which is one of the quietest but silliest scenes before our man Jerry Horn busts in. We get almost, I didn't time it, but like probably a full minute of just the Horn family eating dinner together, not talking, like just hanging out, having dinner, and then Jerry busts in a
static wide shot, no cuts, nothing.
God, no, absolutely no.
Yeah.
And Jerry Horn is introduced. He's Ben Horn's younger brother, and he brought a bunch of. He's like, make sure you get the bread out of my suitcase, and he brings from wherever he was, a bunch of baguettes that are wrapped in plastic that are just, it's brie and butter.
Yeah, he says, here's what he says.
Brother Ben, this is the best damn sandwich I ever ate. It's a baguette with brie and butter. I had 4 of these damn things every day I was there. You gotta try this. Here, go ahead. Eat it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's Ben Horn eating it like a
There's
man.
the dulcet sounds of men eating.
Incredible job.
This is incredible, Jer.
And it's a good sandwich. I know Binging with Bash famously made this sandwich, and like it kind of depends on how good the bread is, how good the brie is, and how good the butter is. Like it's just dependent on these basic ingredients. But they
It doesn't look like a great baguette.
It looks like a baguette. It looks like he's
It
eating
looks like
bread.
a soggy baguette.
And they say it reminds the reason we like this so much is it reminds me of Ginny's and Jenny's down by the river.
Yeah. But they're saying it in this muffled voice that each other can understand perfectly, but immediately cuts out the rest of the family, right? They're eating their own dinner at the family dinner table. They're speaking in their own language, basically, at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just hijacks the scene. He swoops in and carries Ben away from the family.
There's that moment when they're leaving where Ben turns to his family and says, always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Like just the most detached. He is not a family man at all. And all of the issues of his family really stem from that. He's only interested in sort of broing out with his immature brother Jerry.
Brother Jer, please.
Brother Jer. I think I read in the background information somewhere that the reason that he's taking that was
a
huge
Lynch
bite-
order, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think Lynch was telling him to do that, and he was getting really frustrated. Like this was like take number whatever, and he was by this point so annoyed that he's like, okay, I'm gonna play it like this, and he's like, oh yeah, but he's like sick of doing it at this point.
And Lynch is like, keep it. That's the cut we're using. Like,
Yeah.
Great. Camilla made a great point about how like this is them immediately pulling themselves away from family, because Ben Horn is just the kind of guy who has no perspective on his family or what they want. He's just like, oh, my brother's here. All right, we're eating our own food and we're going out and we're not telling anyone when we're coming back. Okay, bye, losers. We're gonna go hang out at the brothel, the secret Canadian border brothel that we know about. Just a deeply unempathetic person who doesn't know how to eat a sandwich.
Oh, and that lack of empathy is further emphasized when they're talking in the hallway.
Yeah.
And Ben says, hey, Leland's daughter died or was killed and the Norwegian deal fell through. And Jerry's like, what? The Norwegians left? Dang, this sucks. Oh, did you say that she died?
Oh, well, I'm depressed.
I'm depressed now.
It's really just a one-upsmanship of how horrible are these two.
Yeah.
Right.
They just get worse and worse with every line. Cartoonishly, and I think the stage for that is set by just biting into that baguette that way. It feels like you can cut this if it's not timely anymore, but many years ago there was a viral stunt that they found someone who looked kind of like Justin Bieber and staged a paparazzi photo of him biting into a burrito in the middle.
Oh, sure.
Do you remember this?
I do remember this.
They were like, Justin Bieber bites into his burritos in the middle like a chump.
Yeah. And it was like some dude.
Even
It's just
more
someone
recent,
else.
it's like those Pete Buttigieg photos where he's eating the cinnamon sticks like they're chicken wings. Do you know that one?
Yep.
And his face is like so like clenched up and
It's
angry.
like a little bit feral.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people just eat food weirdly. Like rich people eat food weirdly. Let's be completely real here. That's the truth of it.
Well, and I think we talked with Charlie in the last half about how, there's so much food in Twin Peaks, and that's an intentional motif because it tells you about, these people and how they experience or interact with the world around them. And someone like Cooper, when you see him eat or drink coffee, he takes a little sip and he's like, wow, this is damn good coffee. Whereas Ben Horn just takes the biggest bite and luxuriates in it and doesn't care about how he's being perceived or doesn't care about, any of the social niceties. He's just the kind of guy who's like going to indulge to the greatest extent possible. And so I think that actually not only is it a hilarious moment, but it communicates everything you need to know about Ben Horne as a person, the way that he eats a sandwich.
Mm-hmm. It's still very much a performance.
Yeah, right.
Like performing, enjoying, and eating the sandwich.
Right. It's so much of the Horne plotline I'm realizing is like about two-facedness. I mean, the idea of the place that they go to, One-Eyed Jack's, is it's a casino / brothel hidden that you have to take a boat to get to, that's on this island that nobody knows about except like the most richest elite people in Twin Peaks and its surrounding areas. We are regular members of the community until night falls. It's like how in the pilot we talked about the Roadhouse, and how the Roadhouse has this cool vibe because it's like, oh, we all like mourn Laura in the morning, but when we get here, it's time to fight and it's time to drink and like do illicit things. Just another like deeply evil space hidden beneath the surface of this town. I want to talk about One-Eyed Jack's because it's another one of those like really iconic sets from the show. It's got that glowing, poker jack symbol at the front with the glowing eye. And they go inside and they see all these women dressed in these like, scantily clad outfits and whatever. And they meet Blackie O'Reilly, who, has these incredible dress, incredible like pointed shoulders outfit. She's looking great. And it's just so sleazy. Like these are people not hiding anything anymore. They're all gross. And they talk about like, Majel and I were talking about the whole like younger women being taken advantage of. And like, I believe the implication is that none of the women here are there of their own accord.
It feels that way.
Yeah.
And one thing that the degree to which I am constantly fear that female characters in this show will be subjected to sexualized violence can make it hard to watch sometimes.
Yeah.
But particularly in this scene, I think they're pretty intentional about making sure that there is nothing kind of alluring about this place, despite the like cool aesthetics and theming. You immediately can tell that this is gross and unpleasant, and the actor who's playing the like new girl gives an incredible wordless performance.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to be there.
Everything about this place and just from the look on her face.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's telling about this scene and the way that Ben and Jerry are interacting with this place and with these young women is the thing that they're lusting for and competing over is who gets to have sex with the newest girl first, right? And there's something about like, it's not just we're going to go and pay for sex. It's we are going to like, we want this sort of the purest, youngest girl. Yeah. And that I think like only further exaggerates the creepiness of this and only further like makes these guys really reprehensible.
Yeah. And Ben Horne, he dresses it up. He does this big Shakespeare sonnet in trying to like make this to give this the sheen of romance in some weird twisted way. Jerry doesn't have any time for that. He cuts straight to what this is about. And both are equally disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, the symbolism is made really clear. I mean, the pool table has a bunch of like severed deer horns on top of it. Like this is a place that's like, we're taking nature and we're taking what's beautiful and we're hiding it and making it evil and twisted in a way. And I think, think about this in the context of Laura Palmer. How often, it's not a coincidence that she's young and attractive and blonde. How often do people, when mourning her, especially older men, say she was so beautiful? She was so, it's not like she was a great member of the community other than the whole like Meals on Wheels thing. It's more like because she was beautiful and because people loved her, that's why we mourn her. And it just, it gives you that vibe of like, the way that these things are often talked about is like in the context of, beauty, fallen grace, fallen beauty, fallen purity, whatever you want to say.
Right.
So One-Eyed Jack's is kind of like a physical manifestation of the evil that we keep talking about, and like the stealing of innocence here. So of course Ben and Jerry are having a great time with this, and they're awful. They make a line. He says a line in here, Jerry, I didn't come in here to lose my shirt. I came to take it off. Which, yuck. It's like one of those lines that you're like, yeah, that's well written, but also like, it just skeeves me so much.
The whole scene is kind of, that sort of skeevy, harrowing. It tells you what you need to, all you need to know, and I'm thankful it doesn't show anything more than what it shows.
Yeah.
And from a narrative perspective, when you were talking about closed room and open room mysteries, this gives you a few moments later in the episode as an audience member where you think, oh, I know what's going on.
Yeah.
Even if it's just moments before the characters do.
Yeah.
But with the notes that Cooper receives and with the comment about the perfume counter.
Right. He gets the thing that's like Jack with one eye and very funnily comes back later. But yeah, this is all being ceded to Cooper slowly. So you know that they're going to come. The investigation is going to come to One Eye Jacks eventually.
Yeah. And there's a comment too later, I think, when Coop gets a phone call when he's at the hotel, and someone says, "Oh yeah, we found out Ronette had a job at the perfume counter, and she had just left that job." And the audience knows from Ben and Jerry's talk earlier that that's where they recruited or like trafficked women for One Eye Jacks.
Right. You can solve that's an open door mystery. You can solve that.
Yeah.
The show doesn't have to tell you that.
As an audience member, that's an attainable aha in a show where those are hard to come by.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of things that the show wants to tell you, but that's one where you are never explicitly told that. But like, yes, Ronette Pulaski presumably was recruited by the proprietors of One Eye Jacks. And there are moments of honesty that this contrasts with later. But like, we can briefly touch on Donna and James being honest with each other. They finally hang out together. There is a moment when they're in Donna's house and her parents are like, yeah, we're going to bed. All right, bye guys. And they just like sit around for a minute before they fully leave. And it reminded me of like when you're with, a crush or something in your home and you want your parents to go to bed so you guys can not even like make out, because they don't, because Donna's a good Christian girl. And like, that's the presumption, is that she's like not trying to do anything like that.
Well, they do make out though.
Do they make out in this?
Yeah, I think they like fully have sex, I think, or it's implied that maybe they're going to.
Oh man.
But they definitely make out, yeah.
So then it is the vibe of like, come on guys, go upstairs. We're trying to tell each other we love each other. But that's also couched in a scene where they are like, yeah, we shouldn't feel this, but it's real to me and I'm trying to be honest with my emotions. And James tells Donna like, it doesn't matter. I liked you before. Even when I was with Laura, I liked you. So I don't think this is bad at all. I think we should engage in this and not feel bad about it. It's surprisingly emotionally mature for some teens.
I think that they're trying to convince themselves of this. I'm not sure that the reason why I think that is one that James is like, Laura's the one, just like in several episodes before.
Yeah.
He tends to pivot the object of his affection pretty quick. But as they're talking about how they would have been brought together even if this hadn't happened to Laura, the music that's playing is Laura's theme.
Yeah.
So it's like Laura's all over the scene.
True.
She's underscoring it, which feels like it's sort of undercutting what they're saying, like that they're trying to convince themselves that this happiness isn't gained because of
Laura's
their
death.
friend's death. That they're trying to convince themselves that this would have happened anyway, so that it's not a gruesome silver lining to something horrible.
Right. And it's also like the way that they're coping, right? Yeah. And so it's not even just like, okay, yeah, we love each other and we're able to beat each other because Laura's dead. It's like, no, we're like wanting to spend all this time with each other because like this is the only other person who really fully understands what I'm going through right now. And like the context of their connection is Laura and her death.
And that by being closer to the other, they think maybe they can be closer to Laura.
Yeah,
in a
I
way
think
that
that
can't anymore.
reconcile their relationship to her. They try to like have a real romance with people who are alive now. It kind of contrasts interestingly to this very brief scene with Ed and Norma much later in the episode, where they're like, I think they're in the diner and they finally like get to talk to each other and be a little bit tender and romantic. And the music is beautiful. I think it's a new track that we haven't heard before, because I know with Badalamenti we hear a lot of the same like 2 or 3 tracks from him in this series. But like Ed and Norma are these adults who are like, yeah, we're both like attached in various ways to other things, but like I just wish that the circumstances were different and I was with you. Like I wish it wasn't the way that it is. And it's not people who died. It's like these are people who are alive. Nadine is alive, and Ed is not saying, you know, I wish I that Nadine was gone. He still appreciates her, like we were saying in the first half, but he's the kind of guy who walks into his house and doesn't feel bad that he spilled grease on her thing. He's like, you put the cotton balls in the middle of the room. Why am I getting yelled at? And she's like, you're such a fool. He's like, I don't feel bad. So there's this like tragedy with Ed and Norma that feels a lot more like, what if, you know, Donna and James just grew up and continued to like feel this pull that they can't kind of fulfill with each other. Really good stuff there, but not too much to say about Ed and Norma just yet. I just wanted to kind of pull at that thread a little bit. So we did One Eye Jacks, and we talked about James and Donna, which again I keep thinking I did not appreciate as much in my first viewing of the show.
I like Donna a lot. I think that James kind of drags down some of her storylines.
Yeah, that's true. Lara Flynn Boyle does bring her A game, but the guy playing James just.
Which I think the is maybe slightly intentional or cheeky, or could be read into that way. But I wish it were a little less.
Yeah,
definitely.
One scene that I do remember absolutely loving on my first watch and loved once again was this great moment in the woods where all of the police people, the sheriff's department staff are playing Zen detective with Agent Cooper.
I adored this whole thing.
This is so lovable and so warm and funny and quirky in just the exactly right ways. And it's
I love how goofy they are. I love Lucy and Andy and Truman and Hawk. What a great group of people.
I love that even though they're baffled, they're on board with this. They're all a team in this moment, even when they're kind of bickering.
Yeah.
It's pretty sweet. It's really charming.
There are a couple really cute quotes that come out of this. I think a moment I really like is when Lucy offers all of them coffee.
Anyone for a warm-up?
Oh, yeah. You bet. Right over.
Thanks, Lucy.
Cooper spits it out.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
He spits it out because it's good and it's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
then,
it burned his mouth, but it's still damn good.
Yes, of course.
And the other quote that I thought was really sweet was the part where Cooper, he's throwing stone. So the whole setup is that they have a chalkboard with names of people whose names have the letter J, because they learned that maybe the letter J means something.
Laura wrote in her library, I went to meet with Jay.
Yeah, and Cooper's big detective technique is to set up a glass bottle across the clearing, and he's going to throw stones at it. And basically, if it hits the bottle on someone's name, then that means that they should investigate them. But there's a moment where he throws a rock and it flies a bit awry.
Sorry, Andy.
Sweetie?
It didn't hurt. It didn't hurt a bit.
Just gets
Sweet,
bombed.
innocent Andy. It didn't hurt a bit.
Doesn't she calls him Sweetie there, right?
Yeah.
Love the two of them. That's, for me, that's relationship goals. I want to get hit in the head with a rock and a girl tells me, oh, you're going to be all right. Sweetie. Yeah.
And then he keeps saying he's okay.
I'm
and
okay.
He like almost throws up.
It's just like
He's trying so hard to be brave.
Lucy being Lucy here, when one of the J's is like Jack with one eye and they realize like, oh, it's One Eye Jack's. And she's like, do I erase it because it's a place or do I keep it because it's somebody who's there? And then Cooper's like, don't worry about it. And she's like, yeah, but do I erase it? And he's like, erase it. Erase the word.
I have a question about this scene. And some of it we might want to move it into spoiler talk.
Yeah.
But one of the things I'm curious about in this scene, and a lot of it is contained within this episode, is how much are we supposed to, as the audience, how much do they want us to see this test as a legitimate, if mysterious, form
like a sign
of sleuthing?
Something.
Mm-hmm.
Because the story about Tibet and the Dalai Lama's exile, to me, it reads as like a little bit appropriative in a way that I don't think was necessarily intended. I can't tell if it was intended that way in the moment. And the fact that we know that One-Eyed Jack's is this important, sketchy place and that they erase it, it feels both like a delightful, we're doing the sleuthing moment, but also that I'm not sure as an audience member whether I'm supposed to see this as reliable in any way.
Well, and the other thing of it is the two people's names who they hit on are the two creepiest dudes. Like, of course, you should go investigate Leo Johnson and Dr. Jacoby. There's something up with both of those guys.
Whether or not it's related to Laura is questionable, but yeah, definitely investigate both of them.
And, you know, it ties with Cooper having his dream later. To what extent in the fiction is there really this sort of like mystical, intuitive detective superpower that Cooper has? Because he seems to be a pretty good detective. Yeah.
And maybe his dream at the end of the episode is meant to sort of retroactively validate the fact that his Tibetan method was gleaned from a dream in the past.
Right.
But it's possible also that this is a Twin Peaks specific phenomenon. So
Cooper himself super duper believes in this Tibetan method. He, I think, visited. It's implied in like some third party book or whatever that like Cooper went to Tibet in the 80s. This is not like lore important or anything, but he's like been there and knows the culture a little bit. He's a spiritual guy. He believes in dreams. He literally makes a phone call at the end and says, "I know who killed Laura Palmer," based on a dream he had.
Yeah,
like that's a guy who made it to the FBI based on that sort of logic. So like. He has had more hits than misses when it comes to trusting in spirituality and dreams. And so I think for him, this is totally legit. And again, what makes it so wholesome is that, like I said, we were saying earlier, like the staff believes it. When he says, like, everybody pay attention, they go to the trouble to show them leaning in, like, we're now listening. We're not, like, laughing at this. They go to the trouble later when they're in the police department again to show Lucy bought a book on Tibet and she's reading a book about Tibet. Because, like,
oh, I didn't even notice that.
It's like a one frame shot, but she's reading like a big green book that just says Tibet on the front. And I was like, she's doing the reading. It's when she meets Albert, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's neat. I think it's an interesting choice that there's no voice of skepticism in the scene, because it leaves you as an audience member to choose whether or not to be that voice yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a feeling that ends up being, Albert as the parallel to Cooper will be more of the like, why do you believe in this stuff kind of guy.
Yeah. Albert's so fun.
I love Miguel Ferrer. He's my dad.
Can I just play his introduction real quick?
Yes,
please, yeah.
So Albert storms in.
Tell Agent Cooper that Albert and his team are here.
Albert?
Albert. Are we gonna have to stand here all afternoon?
No.
Albert Rosenfield. Rosenfield.
Sheriff, this is Lucy. Is Agent Cooper with you?
Yes, he is. Are Albert and his team here, Lucy?
Yes, he is. They are.
We're on our way.
Agent Cooper will be right with you.
Yeah, I can hear perfectly well, Truman.
Harry, Albert and his team are
and then
cream of
this
the crop.
moment.
Albert, the forensics genius.
Thank you.
Working for you, I wouldn't expect anything less.
But I gotta warn you, Albert's lacking in some of the social niceties.
Nobody's perfect.
Isn't that the truth?
That's Cooper just pinching Truman's nose.
He pokes him on the nose. I put down the time code for that moment just in case we didn't have it already.
They couldn't have possibly done a better job of communicating how different Albert and Cooper are in this sequence, because Albert, is such a condescending jerk, moving a mile a minute. Cooper does the nose boop, and then later when Truman tries to square up to Albert and be the tough guy, and he's like, normally if people talk smack in my station, I'd hit him, punch him. And then Cooper's this amazing shot where Cooper just gives him a big thumbs up.
So good. He loves he's so proud of his boyfriend. He's like, I'm so happy for you.
And also throughout the whole scene, whenever Cooper's just looking between Truman and Al, and whenever Al says something mean, Cooper just turns to Truman, just beaming, like, wow, this mean guy said something so mean. What a delight. He's just so happy that they're both in the same room with each other and doesn't entirely pick up on the fact that there's tension.
Yeah.
These boys hate each other, and he's just like, I am here for this. Like, Cooper is us watching that scene, being like, this is great. I'm having a good time.
I identify with Cooper a fair amount, especially in this moment of, I don't entirely know how to react to this, so I'm going to give a thumbs up.
Here we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, when I was pulling that clip, I noticed something that I didn't notice that when I was watching, which is when Albert says, like, oh, I can hear perfectly well, Curly, it cuts back to Lucy and she sticks her tongue out at him.
Oh, wow.
Which is great. Yeah.
I can't. That's honestly big Bulma energy, and I respect it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that the music, when Al comes in, this drum thing is kind of got a noir jazz inflection that reflects the tempo at which he speaks. It feels like a different genre has sort of swept into the building.
We spoke in the first podcast episode about how, like, when Audrey is telling the Norwegians about, like, her friend dying, because they play the funny tuba music, it becomes a funny scene. And this almost adds, like, a Whiplash-esque, like, rhythm to the scene of, like, Albert's like, what's that, Curly? With this, like you said, noir-y, like, fun drum fill or whatever. It's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
So we don't actually get a lot of Albert just yet. That's basically his introduction. We get to see Miguel Ferrer be fabulous as always. Love him very much. And then we go back to the woods. We have some dark things happening in the woods. Leo. So Bobby and Mike get out of jail. They're out of holding or whatever, and they go to finish this drug deal with Leo. They're presumably going to buy, I think it's cocaine. I think we're to understand that he puts cocaine in a football and sells it to them. It's $10,000. Laura had half of the money, and she kept it in a safety deposit box. Why does a 17-year-old have a safety deposit box?
Mysterious.
I think that is I think you are supposed to think that's weird, because that means that, like, Laura has more money than she should, probably, for some reason.
Yes. Yeah. It also makes you wonder what else is in the safety deposit box.
Right. That you don't introduce a safety deposit box into a mystery story without it being a deal of, like, we got to get inside. Right. And so we were saying earlier, there's that mysterious figure in the back, and Bobby's like, what's going on with that? And he's like, don't worry about it. Just pay attention to me. I'm Leo. I have a gun. And they don't give him the money, and he, like, tells them to go long and screams at them, like, come on, go long. And they run away, and he throws the football on the hood of their car. And they drive away with it on the hood of the car. Like, they explicitly don't take it inside. And I don't understand why they didn't just take the football.
They're just stressed out of their minds at this point.
They're not even thinking to take it.
Even before he threatens them with the gun, Leo reveals that he knows Shelley's having an affair in front of Bobby.
Why?
And Bobby has this whole moment of, like, does he know it's me? Who knows what? Is he going to kill me right now? Is this his way of revealing it to me?
Basically fully giving himself away, because he's like, oh, Leo, that sucks. Do you know who it is? Do you know?
do you know who it might be?
He says it like 3 times. He's like, yeah, do you know? Yeah.
You don't suspect a floppy-haired boy, do you? It's not, whoever he is, no floppy hair. Probably got a crew cut. Nah.
Hey, you got football? Yeah, I think that's just Leo, like, testing Bobby to be like, how is he going to react to this? Like, I don't know why you would tell these random guys, like, hey.
I feel like it's almost Leo. I couldn't tell if Leo was, like, is suspicious of Bobby, or if he's just like, he doesn't have anyone else to talk to.
I read it that way.
Yeah.
I read it that he didn't have anyone else to talk to, but Bobby doesn't know that, and so Bobby thinks that he's testing him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what's going on.
That's a more sad and probably accurate read of it than just, like, Leo's the clever, shrewd guy who, like, is trying to read everybody in his community. Yeah,
because I there's no reason to try to in any way empathize with Leo necessarily, but you can see that like the thing that he cares about is having control over Shelley, right?
Yeah.
And so it is genuinely rattling him that he doesn't. It doesn't mean that he like loves her or has affection for her or is anyway a good guy, but I do think that he's concerned about it and being a bit vulnerable with them of like, can you believe that this is happening in my own house? Yeah. But I don't think he suspects Bobby. I think if he suspected Bobby, Bobby would be dead.
Right, by now. Like, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we don't. Yeah, again, that's another one of those like, what's gonna go on with Bobby and Mike? These kooky kids, these kooky teens, and their drug plot line. But at least it ties them back to Laura, which is really important. Obviously, we can briefly touch on one of the most another like really famous scene that doesn't have a ton of plot relevance, but I definitely think we should discuss, which is Audrey and Donna finally chatting each other up for a bit.
Yay!
Yeah. Iconic scene, both because Audrey and Donna are like the two like the cool women of this series for now, and also Audrey does her famous dance in this scene. So this is interesting, right? When you watch this the first time, you're just like, this is weird. Audrey's a weird person who dances because she wants to be noticed. Maybe she wants attention.
Audrey asks Donna about Ben Horn, about her own father, right? And then Donna's like, no, I don't know anything. And Audrey's kind of like, I never said anything. Woo.
Well, I don't know anything about anything.
Isn't it dreamy?
Yeah, it's the second time we see Audrey dance in the episode also because, or was that the previous episode where she's dancing in Ben Horn's office and he comes in?
That's in
the previous episode. But yeah, it seems like she's trying to escape from what she's feeling about all of this. And we learned that she wasn't even necessarily close friends with Laura, didn't know her particularly well, but she's sort of coming to terms with the respect that she had for Laura and like, what does it mean for her that Laura's dead? Because in the pilot, she kind of is like making a show of, oh, my friend is dead to the Norwegians.
Yeah.
Because she's still figuring out how she feels about it. And she isn't able to like have a conversation with anyone about it. Because even though she presents as, you know, a mature adult, she's pretty emotionally immature and can't really just talk to Donna about this.
Yeah, and she's afraid that her family is complicit or involved in some way.
Right.
So, you know, I don't remember exactly how deep this mystery goes regarding Audrey, but it feels like both she's hiding something and whether or not that's even related to Laura's murder is irrelevant, but she just is like, she's dealing with a lot. She has a lot going on in her head besides just like this person died that I know.
Also, one of 3 characters who dances in this
I was going to talk
episode.
about, I made a list of the dancing scenes, and there's some really interesting stuff going on there.
You're talking about Leland, Audrey, and the person in the dream sequence.
And the man from another place is what that character is named.
There you go.
And sort of the sources, who's dancing, who they're dancing for, like who the audience is. And also, they're connected, I think, by the way that the music is used, where in the first 2, we see Audrey put on the jukebox, but it doesn't entirely click that the music is part of the scene. It seems sort of like non-diegetic score because it is by the same composer.
Right.
And then when it becomes score, and then when she references it and says, isn't this music dreamy? You get jolted back into, oh, this is
diegetic.
Part of the world. This is diegetic.
Yeah.
And I think similarly with the record player, the music that Leland is dancing to starts to punctuate different moments, almost like a slapstick score, until it stops and you remember that it's diegetic. And then in the dream, the man from another place says that the music comes from the air, but the music continues after Cooper wakes up.
Right. And he's snapping to it, too.
And he starts snapping to it. And so you're like, oh, is the music diegetic or not? There's this really interesting play with who can hear the music. And as an audience member, when can the characters hear what we hear?
Yeah, it was almost to the point where, like, when Audrey went to the jukebox and put on a song, I was wondering, was like the original aired version of this. Did it have a real song and then Hulu couldn't afford the rights, so they stuck in a Twin Peaks song?
No.
But I guess that's an intentional.
It's intentional, and this is Audrey's
associative
theme,
effect.
sort of.
Right.
Now, at least it has become thus, at least because of the scene. It's called Audrey's Dance on the soundtrack. I do have it on my phone.
It's an iconic song, an iconic scene.
Great song.
I keep finding more things to appreciate about Audrey and Sherilyn Fenn's performance here. The more I think about it. So I want to, again, just keep tabs on that and think about where she's going in relationship to Donna and also Laura Palmer. But moving on, we have a brief just conclusion to the whole Nadine and Ed thing. He spills grease on her cotton balls and she goes, I can't believe you did that. And he's like, I'm sorry, but not really that sorry. And then a day later, she's like, by the way, Ed, that was the secret. And she does the runners for him. And she's got so much happiness in her heart. She's like, look, we're going to be so rich. And he's like,
and he has this look of utmost dread.
Ed doesn't know what he has. Nadine deserves better. I've been saying that.
I wish the show was allowed. I want to be sympathetic to Nadine, and the show makes it really hard.
Yes,
and that bums me out.
Yeah.
You have to consciously choose to have empathy for her because she's, There's also the moment where she's doing the exercise and breaks the machine, and you're like, wait, is something going on with Nadine? And if you're a viewer watching this for the first time, are you like keeping a tab on that and saying like, is that part of the secret? Is like one of them is super strong? Because the show I don't think the show wants you to do that, honestly.
When she hugs Ed too, he reacts as if
like,
he's been hit by a car.
Yeah. She's got super strength. Again, we don't. It's time to talk about the sawmill plot.
Well, my favorite.
Pete is sneaking a key to Josie Packard while talking to Catherine. Catherine's being mean to him.
Yeah, who cares? There's a ledger or something.
There's two ledgers. But the thing is, there's no mystery here. We already know she's working with Ben Horn. It's just that like Josie's finding it out now. So it's just like the characters catching up to what we already know, which is not very narratively exciting.
Yeah, it's mainly a lot of just really good line deliveries from Pete.
Yes.
Right.
And Catherine, the whole mink oil, you've got mink oil on your head thing. That's great.
Yeah. Like I didn't put the time code for this, but like I didn't want to get mink oil on my bedspread.
Yeah, right. That's a great quote.
The word percolator again. Fish in the percolator.
Yep.
Great words.
It's like, remember my great line from the last
percolator.
Throw back to that. Yeah, they just give him fun sequences of syllables to say, and he knocks it out of the park.
There's so little love between Pete and Catherine that I forgot that they were married.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like she's like, go to your room to him.
She like infantilizes him. I think he might be even older than her. It's just, but David Lynch and Jack Nance were like best friends. They were like loved each other. And so it's nice to see Jack in this show, but at the same time, it's like, what are you guys doing? What is this plot line? Why? Is that an excuse for him to be in the show?
Right. Pete Martell as a character makes little sense to me beyond the fact that Jack Nance is too illegally good at what he does.
Yeah. And from the way he's introduced in the pilot, you're automatically very sympathetic to him.
But let's get into the juicy back third of this episode. So first off, Leland Palmer is still, messed up about his daughter's death. He picks up a big photo of her and he puts on the record Pennsylvania 65000 by the Glenn Miller Orchestra. I looked that up in case you were curious about that needle drop. And he starts dancing with the picture of Laura Palmer.
And we've seen so little of Leland Palmer in these episodes. He basically just floats in and is really sad. This is like the longest scene that we've had with him at this point, I think.
Well, there was a scene where he talks to his wife in the pilot, but I don't know if that's longer or not.
Right, true.
It is haunting.
But yeah, this is a really well shot scene too. Like I don't even know how they got that shot where they're spinning with him but focused on the picture of Laura.
Yeah.
Like the camera person must have had to like run circles around him to get that shot right. Or they rigged it to him. I don't know. But yeah, it's a really tense, great scene.
Ray Wise is so good at being over the top in a way that never lets
doesn't
you
feel
forget
hammy.
that he's a real person, that
Right.
Leland is so heartbroken over this
Yeah.
and is just completely falling apart. In my notes, I was trying to figure out how to describe it, and I ended up just with a long list because I couldn't quite pin it down, but I had horrifying, hilarious, heartbreaking.
Yeah.
There it is.
The 3 H's of Leland Palmer.
Well, it's just this is the portrait of a family that's been torn apart. Like Sarah comes into the room and does not understand. She's confused and worried and anxious.
What is going on in this house? Leland! What is going on in this house?
That moment where she
slaps the record,
slaps the needle off the record, was an incredible physical moment.
Very intimidating, very like just she's at her wit's end. Like this guy is like she's going through so much. Again, like I feel like I empathize so much more with Sarah Palmer now than I have ever watching this show. Because all of this feels like quaternary to the rest of the show. Like we've been saying, the show doesn't seem concerned with who killed Laura Palmer, but there is still her parents still exist, and they still like are not over it the way that like we are when we're doing all this Tibetan investigation and we're meeting Albert, and it's like no, but there's still like at the core of this there is 2 parents who lost their child, and we need to remind ourselves of that every once in a while.
Yeah, it's a reminder of the emotional stakes kind of at the heart of it.
Yeah, it doesn't go away when that person dies. You don't forget about that. I really I think this scene is great. It's also like some more violence when he breaks the portrait and then like bleeds all over the portrait, and Sarah's like looking at her hands.
Rubs his blood into the portrait.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's we haven't seen a lot of blood in this series yet, even with like the Ronette stuff. It just feels like okay, the moment of violence has returned a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, something that we, should be thinking about with this scene is that question of what's going on in this house. Like, why it doesn't fully make sense why Leland is doing this.
Yeah,
like he says, like we have to dance for Laura. It's what Laura would have wanted. But it just feels like there's, I don't know. Like I just still don't fully understand why he's behaving the way he is, I guess.
Yeah. Back to the sort of rule of 3 with dancing, like Leland's intended audience for the dance is obviously Laura, but he gets stuck with Sarah watching instead. And there's sort of a fury in that, in the dance not being cathartic in the way he wants it to be.
Right.
And the tragedy of that is underscored by the like big band. And in the clip you just played, when Sarah screams, yeah, what's happening in this house? There's a big like, "Ba-dum," as if it's a punchline.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
You almost expect a laugh track to pop in. Which is so like deliciously wrong. And beautiful, and makes when the music cuts out and she sort of refuses. Yeah, Sarah's like, I'm not okay with this framing of the moment.
Yeah.
Well,
it doesn't get to be the music.
The show has now established the language of it, which is to say, when something really serious or really violent is happening or about to happen, we're gonna play like some fun, loud, happy music and mix it so loud that you can barely hear people talking. Like it's so loud that you can almost not even hear Sarah say that. She's screaming over it. Because that's the music trying to drown out tragedy and drown out heartbreak and stress and all that stuff.
And I think, the fact that Leland is specifically dancing with the framed photo of Laura Palmer that is like the photo.
The photo.
Right. And how does that tie into the conversations that people have about like, oh, she was so beautiful, it's so sad, and like the way in which people are trying to hang on to or construct a particular image of who Laura was. Because it seems like everything that Leland is doing in this moment, the reason it doesn't make sense to me is because it's not like spontaneous. He's not like just dancing. He's like, I'm going to grab this picture and put on this record and dance. Like it's a structured moment, and he's trying to like create a particular image or memory or emotional release.
Like an attempted like exorcism of some sort of feeling that he can't express.
I think this actually ties into the final scene of the episode. So
let's do it. Let's tie it.
Yeah, we'll get into the juiciest scene in this entire dinner, The Skill to Catch a Killer. It's the first Twin Peaks dream sequence, everyone. Yay!
Woo.
If you've ever heard of Twin Peaks, you know that dream sequences are a big thing on this show. Dreams, what we see in our dreams, who we appear as in our dreams, etc., what we call ourselves and all that stuff. And this is the first one. So the situation going on here is Cooper is trying to go to sleep after a long day, and he wakes up and sees a little person who's kind of twitching in the corner. He sees a bunch of imagery really quickly. He sees Sarah Palmer going down the stairs. He sees the man that Sarah saw earlier with the long hair. He sees Laura's body wrapped in plastic. And then he hears a man who later identifies himself as Mike reciting a poem.
Through the darkness of future past, the magician longs to see one chance out between two worlds. Fire, walk with me.
Yeah, super duper spooky. He identifies himself as Mike. The one-armed man is Mike. The long-haired man is called Bob. He talks about that the devilish one possessed him, and that's the reason he took his own arm off, was he had this thing on his arm, and he felt like the devilish one was in me, so I took this part off me. Bob, it's kind of weird. The guy playing Bob, Frank Silver's the actor's name, like reacts to Mike talking as if like he's a heavenly presence, because he looks up. He's in like some mysterious basement that we've never seen before, and he's like, Mike, what are you doing? Why are you talking about me? And then like looks in the screen and talks about like catch you with my death bag and all this stuff, and it's like it just hits you. It's very Lynchian there, the way he does horror, to just throw imagery at you and let you process it after it's already gone.
They're also shot like documentary talking heads, which I kind of love.
Yeah. They're doing their little their confessionals, and then
like, here's my side of the story. Take note, Academy.
Here's exactly.
For
Here's
your
what
consideration.
And we cut to another iconic shot. The man from another place, that little person who is now dancing in his little red suit, he's also twitching. And Dale Cooper is a lot older. This old man makeup on Cooper looks terrible.
It's so bad.
It's really, really bad. And a woman...
Is it intentionally bad? Ooh. It's a metaphor.
Probably not.
Artifice.
Yeah, it's all false.
Well, what if it is?
I mean...
I don't know.
Yeah, but some of the, like I said, some of the CG makeup stuff, I'm like, they didn't have infinite budget on this show. They can't do everything. But Cheryl Lee appears, the actress playing Laura Palmer, and he's like, "Are you Laura? You look like Laura." And then she says, the man says about her that she's my cousin. If you're not familiar with how they do this effect, basically, they have the actors, when they're in this sort of like dream space, say words. How do I exactly describe this? They say words backwards, but forward speaking, and then reverse it so it sounds weird. Does that make sense? Did I explain that correctly? Okay, that's what's happening here. So that's why everything sounds it sounds like as if it's backwards. And this person who looks like Laura Palmer whispers something into Cooper's ear. Presumably, it's the identity of the killer, because he wakes up. And also, there's a brief moment where the man from another place says, Magellan, one of your favorite lines.
Oh yeah, I've got it right here.
Please,
it's my favorite. I think this is my favorite line in all of Twin Peaks.
It's a good one.
Or my second favorite. Third favorite, maybe, but it's really good.
Wow.
Do a ranking.
I've got good news. That the mule is going to come back in style.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
Oh, man.
In the show, it's subtitled for clarity.
Right.
But he says, I have good news. The gum you like is going to come back in style.
Yeah.
And this whole scene, we're probably just going to have to punt it to the spoiler corner.
Exactly.
To parse it. But even if you don't understand what that line means, it like has such an inherent poetry to it.
Yeah.
I love it even if it means nothing.
Right,
you know?
right.
I've got good news that Gum You Like is going to come back in style.
Yeah, because the Twin Peaks fandom loves to parse these scenes and be like, can we nail down exactly what this means now that we've watched the whole show and the movie and the hidden pieces and we read all the books? Can we finally solve Twin Peaks? And it like that line, like you said, I have an explanation for it. I'll talk about it in the spoiler section, but like you don't need it. It's not going to like solve the show for you, and the show doesn't need you to solve it. It's going to do it for you. You just watch the show and you'll have a great time. You don't need to have that explainer. You don't need an explainer video or whatever that tells you everything about Twin Peaks. That's just a cool thing for a character to say in a dream. I think shows don't do dream sequences super well. I think that's like kind of a difficult and awkward thing to write and make it feel realistic, but David Lynch just gets it. He gets what it feels like to be like, what? That was weird. There was like a guy dancing. And there was like a shadow that floated by and there was curtains and then I woke up. Like, that's fine.
It very effectively straddles the sort of banal, mundane and the cosmic and the idea of things coming back and dying and coming back and dying and repeating themselves while also being, just completely mundane.
It's just weird.
It's delightful.
And tied to the very... It's such a specific line to Cooper also because it's tied to the little pleasures he gets out of things like a gum that he likes. You know, it links to that too. Well, should we end this so we can go talk about spoilers?
Yeah, I think we should do that. Exactly.
Can I pitch a quick segment before we jump into Spoiler Town?
Sure.
This is Camilla's Pacific Northwest Corner.
Washington, my home, wherever I may roam, this is my land, my native land, Washington, my home, our verdant forest green, caressed by silvery stream, from mountain peak to fields of wheat, Washington, my home.
Yeah, so I am from Seattle in the Pacific Northwest, and a lot of the show was filmed in the area here and obviously takes place in the area. So I wanted to just give some little thoughts on some of the places in Washington where the show was filmed that I have been to, and also to offer some little thoughts about like where roughly in Washington I think Twin Peaks probably is, if you're really excited about geography. So a lot of Twin Peaks, particularly exterior shots, were done in the Snoqualmie Valley and North Bend, which are a little ways south of Seattle. It's maybe like a 45-minute to an hour drive, depending on the traffic. And so pretty famously, the waterfall and from the opening and the Great Northern Lodge at the top are Snoqualmie Falls and the Salish Lodge. And that's like a pretty popular hiking spot. And the lodge, inside it looks totally different. Outside it looks completely the same, but they have very much capitalized on connections to Twin Peaks. They sell like little paraphernalia. Snoqualmie Falls is a really important indigenous spot to the Coast Salish people. So there's a lot of like tribal legal disputes about whether it should be dammed to produce hydroelectric power or whether that should be removed to maintain sort of the spiritual integrity of the location. So it's a pretty historically important spot. Yeah, a lot of the exterior shots were around in North Bend, and the diner, the Double R Diner, you can go into the interiors. It's a place called Tweed's Cafe.
No way.
It's done up to look exactly like the interior. They have little photos from the show on the inside. They serve cherry pie and coffee. Don't worry.
Oh, God bless. Well, I think they redid it for the return. They also like remodeled it to look like the Double R again. Like it became a different diner, and then they were like, actually, while we're filming this, we're gonna make it look exactly like it did in the 90s again. That's rad.
Yeah, it's
Very cool.
it's technically called Tweeds, but everything inside says double R,
Right.
which is kind of funny.
Fantastic.
And let me see if I can find. I sent Magellan some photos, but they have like a big shot of like Bobby looking broody. It's like a promotional photo, and then the book at the table for you to read while you're waiting for your order is called "How to Get Along Without Your Memory."
Ooh,
So that's kind of cute.
Cool.
It's a fun little spot. There are companies that will do like Twin Peaks tours of the area.
Okay.
And interestingly, to me at least, while a lot of the show was filmed south of Seattle, because of the way they talk about One-Eyed Jacks being across the Canadian border, inaccessible order only by boat, my guess is that Twin Peaks is supposed to be kind of around Anacortes or maybe like Bellingham, although that's too big of a city. I think that because you sort of get into the San Juan Islands in that area, which some of them are within the US and some of them are within Canada. So if you're in those islands, which you can get to by boat, you can like see into Canada from them. So I think it's this sort of little northern pocket. And I think in terms of like Pacific Northwest aesthetic, it's obviously very stylized, but pretty true to form.
Birds and waterfalls and trees.
Yeah.
As far as I can
Birds,
see.
waterfalls, trees. The sort of small towniness, like there are a lot of towns with that vibe.
Yeah.
To some extent and of that size. I think that in the fall, you get those chunky sweaters. We love them.
I always appreciate a good chunky sweater. That's beautiful.
This is probably more testament to my own aesthetic than the Pacific Northwest aesthetic, but I've like accidentally dressed like a Twin Peaks character before.
Oh, of course. Of course.
Yeah. It was fun to watch the show having actually been to some of these places and remember, oh yeah, this is in many ways local and about what it's like in some sense to be from where I'm from.
Caressed by silvery stream, from mountain peak to fields of wheat, Washington, my home.
Hi, this is Future Camilla coming to you with some follow-up thoughts and a slight asterisk to the Pacific Northwest Corner segment. Something that I didn't end up touching on to the degree I wanted to when we were recording this episode is the way in which Native American culture and Native American art and also individual characters appear in the show. So the Pacific Northwest is a pretty diverse place, and it has a lot of different indigenous groups that are collectively generally known as Coast Salish, but includes many different and distinct tribes like the Duwamish or the Snoqualmie. And unfortunately, not everywhere in Washington is representative of that diversity because of a really, really long, ugly history of systemic racism. And so it isn't uncommon to see towns like Twin Peaks that are predominantly white, but have white families like the Horns with a lot of indigenous art on their walls, kind of using the aesthetics of these cultures whose land they've stolen in order to impart a sense of gravity or history without actually providing any historical context to what is, in the case of the Great Northern Lodge, literally a business venture, which is super gross. So kind of when I joke about Twin Peaks capturing the Pacific Northwest, I think it's unfortunately capturing like a very narrow and very white corner of the Pacific Northwest. And there's potentially an argument to be made that David Lynch and Mark Frost are trying to critique or poke holes at this tendency, I guess, or that they're critical in presenting it, they're being critical of it. It's not totally clear to me that that's what they're doing. Like, if that's what they were intentionally doing, I would love for it to be a little bit more explicitly the case. And I think it's a bummer when I was thinking about where Twin Peaks takes place. Part of why I was doing that was I was trying to figure out what native tribe actually lives on that land, right? Like Snoqualmie Falls, where the exterior scenes of the Great Northern and the waterfall in the opening is filmed, is a place of incredible cultural and spiritual significance to the Snoqualmie tribe. And it's a shame that the only character representing that is Deputy Hawk, and that we don't really get the specificity of like how he feels about that, beyond that he is sort of the voice of the past and the present and the future of all these very, very different, very distinct Native communities from both Pacific Northwest Washington, like the Coast Salish, but also Eastern Washington, like the Nez Perce. I think it's mentioned in one of the like side books. And it's too bad that he isn't sort of given the gift of specificity in his background that a lot of other characters are given. And I think that if there were more Native representation, it would be a way to have a panoply of detail surrounding various Native identities that the show just doesn't have. So ultimately, I think that Twin Peaks does kind of succeed in capturing a very specific sliver of the Pacific Northwest, but it does so in a way that walks a not entirely comfortable line between critiquing or just repeating and recreating the kinds of appropriation and ignorance that can be endemic to little towns like this.
Pretty rad that the show, or you actually get a show that's like popular and well regarded that takes place in that specific area of the United States, because you don't see a lot. That takes
well, we have Twilight.
True.
All right, so thank you, Camilla, for that, for the Pacific Northwest corner.
Yep.
I just replayed
It's
whatever
the Northwest
jingle
corner.
I played the first time. So let's close her out and let's get into spoiler zone. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can email us, chatspod@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/chatspod. And please, if you would like, rank us on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you rank podcasts. We're currently called Peaks Chats, a Twin Peaks podcast. That's our current naming on those platforms. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/chatspod, where you can back us at $1, $3, or $5 a month. $1 a month gets you access to some episodes in the backlog. It's mostly a way to say, yeah, keep doing what you're doing. $3 a month gets you access to our bonus content. We try to produce about 3 bonus episodes a month. $5 a month gets you thanked at the end of the show and also gives you a chance to vote on what could end up as bonus content for our patrons. Our $5 patrons.
By the way, if people are still listening, hi. Next week we are watching Rest in Pain and the One-Armed Man.
Oh, whoops, sorry.
No, it's okay. That's all you need to mention. Rest in Pain and the One-Armed Man are the next episodes we're going to be watching. Thank you very much to our $5 and above patrons. It's Stefan. It is 6. Ryan C. Fendon. Marcus Hedwig. Kat. Andrew. Patrick. And Nicholas of the Brothers at Infinite War. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. No, you're all the best. You're our $5 patrons, and you keep us, just like everyone else that supports us, running and moving strong. So thank you for your support.
Yeah, of course. And then we always like to end the show with some recommendations from each of us, some chatsums to snack on. Camilla, you're our guest. Do you have a recommendation for folks, a chatsum?
Ooh.
Any sort of piece of media or experience that you think the people out there should indulge in this week?
Well, I have of late gotten really into Dungeons and Dragons actual play shows and tabletop actual play shows. And I guess 2 that I would recommend that I've been enjoying recently. Dimension 20, which is a series that you can stream on this very niche streaming service called Dropout, does genre mashup stuff. And right now they're doing a kind of critical but loving takedown parody re-examination of Harry Potter and the magical school genre called Misfits and Magic. It's primarily a cast of people of color kind of reckoning with the weird legacy of these books while also kind of taking the piss out of the genre. It's really delightful and fun. I'm excited to see how it continues. If you want to listen to something that's not behind a paywall, there is a podcast called Not Another D&D Podcast that's run by a lot of college humor folks, and they're doing a kind of Victorian Gothic horror adventure right now. Really fun. The last episode was good, so that's what I've been thinking about.
Sweet. Awesome.
Alan, what about you?
I have a new show for folks who have been keeping up with me for a while. Every Sunday, I have my two pals I watch TV shows with, and we're going through all different series that we wouldn't watch on our own time. And we just started a new one. It's called Giri Haji. It is on Netflix. It was a BBC drama, and it feels like it's actually a little bit Peaksy in that it's a murder mystery, but that doesn't... saying that every murder mystery is Twin Peaksy is kind of coy. Giri Haji is a story about a detective from Tokyo who is sent to London to look for his missing brother who is involved with the Yakuza and accused of murder. But what's really fun about it, besides the fact that it's incredibly sharp and uses violence well, has a very diverse cast, and is beautiful to look at, is the language, the way that the show handles language. So when he's in Japan, he speaks full Japanese. Once we get to London, the show becomes a BBC drama, and most people are speaking in British English. But when he's still with the Yakuza in London, he's code switching all the time. And so like you're hearing him like reconcile these different identities. Giri Haji is a combination of two Japanese words that mean duty and shame. So the show is about this character and every other character on the show reconciling what they have to do with what they are, regretful of and what they are shameful of. And it's just really, really tightly paced. We shotgunned 4 episodes of it, which they're all hour-long episodes. So that was a lot for me in one evening. It's an 8-episode series. It was canceled, unfortunately, after that first season. But Giri Haji on Netflix, you got to check it out if you want a good murder mystery, drama, crime story. It's got a lot going on. It's kind of like a modern noir. I can't recommend it highly enough.
My chatsum for this week. So for a while, on and off, I've been following the content of this magician named Brian Brushwood.
Wow, what a throwback. Wow.
He's the spiky-haired guy who used to do Scam School, if anybody ever watched those videos, where basically he teaches you little magic tricks and like math and logic puzzles or things that you can do just to like show off to people. He frames it as like you can scam them out of a buck at the bar or whatever, but it's not really about that. Like maybe 5-6 years ago, I was listening to his podcast, which is now called Night Attack, and watching Scam School a lot, and then kind of fell off. And then the other day, YouTube recommended a video to me of his channel, which is now called Scam Nation. And it turns out that because of quarantine over the past year, instead of doing his videos out at a bar with random strangers, he's been doing these puzzles and magic tricks with his daughter and like teaching them to her. And it's fucking adorable. So I highly recommend going to Scam Nation and just checking out Brian Brushwood, now not in his sort of like cool spiky hair guy phase, but in his like schlubby dad phase, teaching magic tricks to his daughter. It's really sweet. So
that's the cutest thing in the world. That's the best thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you, Camilla, for joining us for this episode of Peaks Chats. We really appreciate it. And we are going to end the episode now and move into the spoiler zone. So if you do not want to be spoiled, stop listening.
Stop it.
Thank you for listening to Peace Chats. Damn good podcast. Goodbye.
Damn good. Damn good.
Okay, this is for seasons 1 and 2. So if you're listening to this and you're in the post-pod, hi, welcome. It's spoiler time. I'm still talking to Charlie Magellan. Okay, so a couple things. We're going big conspiracy brain here, boys. Bobby is also Bob. His best friend is Mike. Bob and Mike. Parallels, we think?
Oh.
I literally never thought about that until this viewing, and I felt like my brain expanded twice, the double fold.
Bob and
Mike. Parallels. There's a Bob and Mike already in Twin Peaks, separate from the other Bob and Mike.
Yeah, but like what is that?
Well, I just think it's there's doubles of people.
Right.
I don't think that they are another Bob and Mike. They are like two men that are doing evil things. Yeah. And one of them's helping the other one, but I don't think there's much more to it than that. I just think that might have been an intentional pick of like Bobby and Mike, Bob and Mike.
It's so easy to just pick another name.
Yeah.
There's so many names.
Like Ben and Jerry was intentional, so Bob and Mike, why wouldn't that be intentional, right?
Yeah, I wonder if, getting to this idea of like emphasizing how common this kind of evil is, like, is that why Bob is named Bob and Mike is named Mike? Is just because it's
normal
like
names.
Your normal names, just like our normal boys over here.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of what's going on.
Almost definitely. And speaking of Bob, well, actually, before we talk about the Bob thing, James does briefly say he's going to need a hand from the Bookhouse Boys, which when John and I both were like, yes, let's go. The boys are coming in like a season.
And Ed and Truman, they talk about stakeout or something. Who's
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's like a weird hand signal moment between maybe Hawk and Ed.
Love the Bookhouse Boys. Big fan of that. So the Bob scare. Here's my other big brain theory. I've been thinking a lot about like Sarah Palmer and how she sees Bob. Charlie, you know about the whole Bob thing, right? The whole thing? Okay. So she's pushing out a memory that she does have. She does know in the back of her mind that her husband did this, I think.
Okay.
So when she sees Donna, she thinks of Laura, and she literally can't get Bob out of her head. That's why he appears by the bed, because it's like, oh, he's still there. I can't escape that. And that comes back in the second episode when we'll talk about that. When, he's dancing and everything, and she's freaking out. She says, what's going on in this house? I don't remember if this is true. Is the implication maybe that she was like drugged into forgetting it? That's my other theory.
Drugged into forgetting
that Leland killed Sarah.
Leland killed her. I don't remember that happening. I think she's just repressing it. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's I think a lot more potent than just what I originally watched the show and I was like, Sarah's weird. Why is Bob in the show? It's like, no, actually it's like her repressing something that keeps coming up. When Hawk interviews the Pulaskis and Mike goes to the morgue, I think he's looking for a new host body because the guy that's like Mike is one of the bodies that we don't see. Like Bob is in his whatever spiritual form as like the greasy haired man. That's like original Bob. And then when he possesses like, Cooper later, that's a different Bob. That's Bob in another body. But we never see Mike in his original body. He's only in this like traveling salesman guy with one arm. Gerard or something, I think his name is. Philip Gerard. I thought that was interesting. I don't remember why he's going to the morgue though. But it is cool that he was seated this early because I know he's not like a big deal until a little bit later.
Yeah, I think we'll learn it later what he's up to.
And then...
Because also he kind of has a different... Like Mike is like a good spirit.
Well, he talks about like... we'll talk about that in episode 2. Yeah, because he cuts his arm off because he had the Fire Walk With Me tattoo on his arm.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's pretty dope. Also, Major Briggs going to be the one that cracks open the UFO conspiracy. We love to see it. I'm so excited. The show's going to get stupid. And just Dr. Jacoby, Laura Palmer stuff gets creepy and weird as I remember it. That's all.
Yeah.
That's what I have for spoilers for this episode. Thank you for that.
I mean, the big spoiler thing that I want to talk about is just that none of the police procedural stuff matters at all. Like none of it. Oh, the clues and the people here and there. It's just, I mean, eventually like A leads to B to C, like in their mystical magic system thing. But like basically the idea of, oh, does this little clue mean that this person regular killed Laura is like irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it must have been the case that people watching at the time were like, oh, what do you think?
Yeah, right. It make you feel like there's like a normal mystery to figure out.
I was doing some reading. I can't remember where I read this, but I read that there was like a community of people in like Denver or something who would meet at a bar on a weekly basis to like watch the show and talk about it.
That
Which sounds like an incredible TV experience. But then probably all of them were like, well,
well, shit. Like 5 episodes in, they're like, oh, it's that guy? Okay.
You can't figure it out. You talked about this last episode. Closed or open?
Yeah, closed and open door mystery. It's still kind of a closed door mystery. Like, it makes the rock scene in the second episode that much more of a bummer. Where it's like, what are you guys even looking for? They're like, it's either Jacoby or it's Leo, and I'm like, no, it fucking isn't. Shut up. Like, it's not that. You're way off.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna talk about the Red Room next episode.
Yeah, with Camilla.
I'm excited now. All right, Charlie. Anything else you want to talk about spoiler wise that you're excited for?
I'm just excited. No spoilers, just the excitement.
Okay, I'm glad. Yeah. Thanks again, Charlie.
Thank you. It's so fun to talk about it. Really, really fun.
Indeed. Hey guys, it's the Spoiler Zone. Welcome to it. You just heard the first half of the Spoiler Zone. I have some notes. I know this is like how I keep starting these, but I still have some notes. So these are mostly about the last 2 scenes, right? We got the Leland Laura scene. Camilla didn't hear us talk about this with Charlie, but we were discussing like whether or not Sarah, it's implied that she was like drugged or something to not remember, because she keeps clutching her head as if she's trying to like remember something, and she has like these headaches. And so I'm wondering if that's what's going on, where she's like, what's going on in this house? It's like she feels something in the back of her head, like I know about Leland, but I don't know, it's like it's caught in this like trauma that I have, or if it's just like trauma suppressing memories. What do we think?
My assumption, having, again, not revisited the show for a little while, is that it's sort of connected to her preternatural sense of Bob's presence in the house.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's maybe connected. It's maybe her ability to sort of grasp at it but not fully clutch it is representative of a sort of trauma.
I think she also just intuitively understands that what Leland is doing doesn't make sense. And it I was trying not to tip this too much to the listener, and I might have to cut around it because maybe we're being too obvious, but like Leland is racked with guilt, right?
Yeah. Why are you guilty? About what, pal?
And everything that he's doing is this performance to try to rid himself of that guilt. And
he fucking bleeds on the portrait. He bleeds on the portrait of the daughter that he killed.
Yeah. And I think Sarah is like in tune with that on some level as well, along with, sensing Bob's like spooky evil presence.
I think Majan and I have always been somewhat of the opinion that like it's more interesting if Bob is Leland. It's the manifestation of Leland's like evil tendency, and the evil that men do is, I think, a line in season 2. As opposed to like the supernatural spirit that possessed Leland to do it. What's your take on that, Camilla, before I talk about the dream sequence?
I think to some extent, I think of Bob as a little bit of both, right? There's sort of the evil that men do that they're sort of conditioned to be capable of by society. I don't know. This is very like English history paper about it.
I mean, that's true. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a part of him, at least enough that this level of guilt is warranted. Right? But I also think that it's something that's far enough away from his self-conception of who he is and who he wants to be.
Right.
That it's deeply split off.
He might still be in the phase where he feels like he was possessed to do it. Like he isn't even close to reconciling, like maybe you wanted to do it in a way. He's just like, this thing took hold of me and made me do this awful act.
And it might even still be in his subconscious at this point or something. Like he doesn't fully remember. He just has like a sense that he feels bad or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily feel like a tip off. Again, watching it again, I don't read it as a sort of confession of guilt, but as sort of someone who truly doesn't know how to grieve, and to some extent there's no right way to grieve, but the different techniques that he's trying obviously aren't working. He's exhausting the methods that we see the most frequently, and it's becoming more ritualistic, and like I said, it becomes like an exorcism, maybe in ways that he doesn't realize yet. but become literal.
Yeah. So what about that dream there?
So I got all the answers here, folks. I have.
Okay,
hold on.
We've cracked the case. It's double mint gum.
It's double McCon. No. So, okay, first things first, Dale Cooper watches a person. The little person later is, now they're called the man from another place by the fandom. The return goes on to call them the arm for reasons I'm not going to get into. It might have to do with like Mike. He's like the arm, the Mike.
Mike has no arm.
Right. Yeah. It's a whole thing. Obviously, we see Bob and Laura's body in the Fire Walk With Me poem, which she's going to find in the movie, like written somewhere. Briefly, this is not a return spoiler. They talk about the convenience store and how they lived above a convenience store. That's going to be a thing in the return. Just going to put that out there. The devilish one that he's talking about is obviously Bob. Bob is the evil half. Mike is the good half.
Isn't the convenience store thing also in Fire Walk With Me?
I think briefly. I think you see them above it. You do see them above it, but you see way more of it in the return. Yes. Okay. Catch You With My Death Bag, I think is related to Bob wrapping women in plastic. I had this moment like this past week where I was like, why the fuck is Laura in plastic? Like, what's the actual purpose of that? And part of it is so he can put her down the river without her like falling. And part of it is he has this want to preserve purity. That's why he wraps women in plastic when he kills them, is because he's like, it'll preserve them. And she looks like ethereal when they take her out of it, you know? So that's what he's doing there.
It's kind of interesting that the way Laura Palmer is canonized both within the show and as a pop cultural icon outside the show is in the two images of her prom photo with
and
the
her
tiara
dead body.
And her dead body.
Yeah.
Totally.
That the prevailing images of her, how the characters within the show remember her, and how we as consumers of this pop culture remember her.
Right.
Yeah,
are serving a similar kind of unfortunate purpose.
Exactly. Yeah. Cheryl Lee, it feels in a way like Cheryl Lee was kind of done dirty by the show, because it's like you're on this great show and you get to be a dead body and a prom photo. But that's why they introduced Matt.
Well, and then she...
Stay tuned for Maddie.
Yeah.
Cousin.
So she's my cousin.
I didn't realize it was Cheryl Lee for several episodes because her hair was a different color.
Exactly. So he brought in Maddie, and even though she doesn't go anywhere narratively, mostly so that Cheryl Lee could like be on the show actually. She says, someone says, I feel like I know her, but sometimes my arms bend back. Leland tied her arms behind her back when he tied her up and killed her. And then, where we are from, the birds sing a pretty song and there's always music in the air. It's the woods. It's the White Lodge. I'm sure that's what they're going for here. There's a good place that these people are from, as opposed to the bad place, which is where the Black Lodge is. I don't like the Black Lodge, White Lodge lore too much, but I know it's that it exists.
It's a bird that flies by in silhouette too.
It's an owl.
The curtain.
It's an owl. Yeah, because owls know what they see, all that stuff.
The owls know what they see. I don't know if that connects to the bird song. Then I don't really associate owls with bird song.
Yeah,
but it seems.
And that gum you like
maybe it was the choir getting ready. You know.
Yeah, possibly. That, and also there's a statue of Saturn in the back. It's supposed to be like Saturn eats his child. Yeah, that's easy metaphor. Cute. Agreed. That gum you like is going to come back in style. Somebody says this to Leland in late season 2, and Cooper's there, and this is the line that makes him realize that Leland did it. Because Leland's talking about gum. It's literally that simple.
He's talking about the gum that he loved as a child.
Yeah. Can you believe it?
Where has it gone?
That's the perfect example. The answer is way dumber than just being like, that was weird to say. Like, the actual answer sucks.
I went on an internet forum to see what people's ideas were, and they were very fun.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite one is that it was about the double your pleasure, double your fun, double something, double mint gum.
Yeah.
And that it had to do with Maddie showing up as Laura's double.
Ooh. Good.
Doppelgangers.
Love it.
Branding.
I think that line takes on... Once Fire Walk With Me happens, Camilla, you haven't seen the movies. Okay if I spoil it a little bit.
Spoil it.
So, like, a big part of the movie Fire Walk With Me is making clear that, like, Leland's abuse of Laura is, like, a generational thing. Like, he was sexually abused by his father, and Bob was possessing his dad. And so there is something in that line that Gum You Like is going to come back in style that's about, like, childhood innocence before these horrible things happened to him that he then carried out on his daughter. And so there's kind of this like the reason that the man from another place says, I have good news, is he's sort of conveying this hopeful message of like, maybe we will be able to return to that innocence, or that's something that we can like hold on to and hope for, that we can break the cycle of abuse in this family.
Oh, so when I was saying that earlier, I was closer than I thought.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was spitballing, but I spat that ball right on the target.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's what I got. There's not,
and then we're gonna hear what Laura whispered to Cooper later, right?
I think so.
I think we do. I think we flash back to that at some point,
and then we see it and we hear it. I mean,
I'm pretty sure.
Well, I mean, it's probably like Leland killed me.
I think it's when she's like, "I'll see you in 25 years" or whatever.
Oh, and then 25 years later, the return happens. Oh,
it's something like that.
Sure.
I think, or that's another dream sequence in the Red Room.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
But
yeah, it might just be a different scene.
This is great. These segments basically are going to keep existing for us whenever there's a Red Room moment to be like, all right, what are they doing? What are they doing here? Because it's nonsense out of context, and I love it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you again to both of you. Let's go.
Yeah. Any other, Camilla, before we stop? Any other spoilery things you wanted to talk about?
Oh, let me look through my notes. I don't think so.
Camilla was explaining to me what's the deal with Blackie O'Reilly later, and it sucks. It's just like she dies. She like drugs Audrey, and when she goes to the one at Jack's for a while.
Oh yeah, she's the worst.
Yeah.
You kind of think that maybe there's some complexity to her particular brand of evil, but she's just real evil.
Mm-hmm.
She's just human trafficker.
Yeah, big time. I think that's what I got. Oh, we didn't talk about that cute whistle. Cooper has some doorbell.
I have a clip of it.
Play the clip now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it this one?
Aw, sweetheart.
It's a little treat for the people who stuck around for the spoilers.
I love that.
Dude. Cooper's so fucking cute.
I love.
Great.
Oh man.
Do you remember there was an internet quiz a few years back that was very popular? That was what fictional character are you like? But it was a very long one, and it gave you like 20 characters.
Ooh.
I wanted us to do that for a Chats Nights episode.
Yeah.
Oh,
I got like a bunch of Sopranos characters.
In the most flattering thing that any online quiz has ever told me, it gave me Agent Cooper.
Oh,
wow.
Iconic. That's awesome.
Wow.
Really,
I can
really
see that.
The only good internet quiz, because it told me what I wanted to hear already.
Right. feed the vibe. That's great.
Yeah.
I see it
But
too.
I felt an affinity ever since then.
Yeah.
It's time for Camilla to become an FBI agent.
Yeah. Thanks, folks, for listening. If you listen this far, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.
For the next time.
Bye bye. I could go absolutely sicko mode and do it the way that they do it in the show, which is I say it backwards and
then we have to play it backwards.
We can talk about this later. I tried to do that. I spent like 20 minutes the other day trying to learn how to say like happy to be here for when you introduced me, and to say it backwards. And it was incomprehensible. I tried for so long. It's really hard.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Okay.
I tried to do a cool bit. Nope.
I think I'm gonna try to do it. I think this is it's 4 syllables.
Yeah, give me both.
She, ish.
Sheesh is pretty easy to say backwards.
Okay.
Sheesh.
Okay, I got it.
Let's hear it.
You want me to do it before, or do you want me to just do the intro?
Do the backwards one first, and then do the...
She masakne.
No.
It's
not. No, it's got to be scene. Like you have to do it. Like
you have to do she's backwards, then my backwards, not the whole thing backwards. What difference does that make?
You said in cuz, but
yeah,
that doesn't
cousin.
Reverse it. Well, no, it has to be phonetically backwards, not just reverse the syllables.
Yeah. Well, the trick is that you record yourself saying it forward, then you reverse it,
and then you
it's
she mea cousin
my she so it'd be she's my cousin.
Okay, I'll give it.
I'm so excited for when the episode comes out and I understand what it means.
Okay, Alan, try it and then do the normal one.
Again, do you want me to do the intro or do you want me to just keep giving you takes of this?
I want you to give me takes of this isolated and then do the intro forward.
Got it.
And then if any of these takes work, I can edit it into the intro, yeah.
She's my cousin.
I think that was it.
Okay.
Can you do one more of those?
She's my cousin.
Perfect. Okay, now you can do the normal intro.
Okay.